Ricard is. Okay, it's starting the live stream now, I think. It says preparing to live stream the meeting.
It says we're live. Hi, Andreas and Ricard and Vekard? Vekard.
Yeah,
G,
that's right.
G.
Hi.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, Vegard. Got it.
Yes.
Hey, nice to meet you. Nice to meet a couple of you, Ricard. Of course, we've done this before, but it's nice to see you guys. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Our first ever YouTube live stream. So we won't be able to see the YouTube chat. I mean, I'm assuming people will actually show up for this thing that we just scheduled an hour ago. But like, let me, I'll pop out the chat so that I can see if anything's going there. Brian, you're on the right microphone, I assume?
I'm just checking now. Right mic and right webcam. So yeah, we're good.
Okay, let me just set up a couple other things.
So Andreas, are you in Norway also?
Yeah, Oslo.
So you're in Oslo. Vegard, where are you?
West Coast, Haugesund.
Sorry, can you spell that for me?
I have to write it, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, West Coast.
West Coast, Norway. Hemgezone?
Haug. I'll write it in the chat.
Okay, yeah.
But you could also say, ask again on the show. It'll be fun to our all Nordic countries final. I was joking before. I guess I'll say it on. Okay, I'll say everything on the show. I don't want to waste any gold.
Ricard, I've never asked where in Sweden you are.
Yeah, that's we'll go with the theme, I guess. It's the West Coast, just outside of Gothenburg. So
okay,
let's go Gothenburg.
Okay, Alfredson's hometown, but not quite.
Not quite. Kind of. I played golf just outside of his house a couple of months ago. So he lives just north of Gothenburg. I'm kind of more east.
Oh wow! Lucky you and lucky him to have a house there. So I guess you're in a place where it's kind of like when people say, yeah, I live near Toronto. You know, there's like 100 cities surrounding Toronto that nobody knows. So everyone just says I live near Toronto.
Yeah, I'm that guy. Yeah. Definitely.
Got it.
What's the name of the place, Richard?
Lerum.
Sorry, what? Come again?
Lerum. Just outside of Gothenburg. But Lerum is the place. It's a small town.
So, hey, Brian.
Hogsund.
Are they the ones that are making the jam?
Lerum.
Is it famous for its jam?
No, it's. I'm trying to figure out what you're thinking about, but
No, I just know that
we're not known.
This is like live, by the way, streaming on YouTube right now.
This is a really good show, though. I wish we had started officially.
Yeah.
We're
take
recording.
A tour of take a tour of Scandinavia.
No, what I'm saying is save this for the. This is all gold, and you got to save it. It's so good.
Okay.
Where the jam is made.
Yeah, Ricard, can you type the name of where you're from, of where you are, Ricard?
But so Brian, are you going to come in and act like you know all this?
No, but I want to at least sort out the what? I don't think that would make for good.
Okay, so hey, Brian, a couple things.
I'm having enough technical difficulties here, so I'm just gonna spell it for you. It's 5 letters. It's Lerun.
Lerun.
There you go.
Lerum. And the N in the end, like Michael.
Oh, okay, Lerum.
Okay.
Yep.
So, if I may, sorry to interrupt. Okay, I guess a couple things. So, first of all, I guess if everyone could just kind of mute themselves whenever you're not talking, but obviously feel free to chime in if you want to mock a pick or something. But just to have background noise. Brian, did you get my spreadsheet that I gave you?
I'm pulling it all up now.
Okay, make sure to use the Brian version and not the Elon version. Because my version, I'm going to be sorting and stuff as we go. But basically, I've got the picks of where people were picked in the last round and also points for the total playoffs and points for the last round. So you could feel free to use that to help make your commentary.
Okay.
It's all in the summary tab.
I'm getting in. I'm working on it. We're doing the draft first and then content after, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
Great.
And then also what I was going to say is at some point we'll come in with this DraftKings whatever ad, but we'll I don't know. I'll just like pause the draft when we do that. That will just take a second. That copy is ridiculous. It's always about winning hundreds of. Oh wait, we're live. Yeah, winning lots of money. Okay, and then I think that's it, Brian. I was thinking at the start maybe what Ben did that I liked for the last one is like maybe we could do a quick introduction first, but then like when everyone comes in to make their first pick, maybe then you could do more chatting then. So I could like pause the draft if we need. You could ask people like how they got here, like who they had in the last round that got them to make it, like all that stuff.
We'll have a little first pick introduction.
Yeah, like Jeopardy. Or no, I guess Jeopardy does it differently. They do it. Like,
Jeopardy's after single Jeopardy is over.
Yeah. But okay, I guess with that, how about let's start the show? And I could always pause the draft if we haven't gotten to this yet. I guess we have to mention Dobber Hockey also just at the start. This is very exciting. So I think everything's ready. It says I'm recording. And then Brian, I'm thinking we'll like afterwards just like stop and do a new recording for the second half of the show where we'll use our Audacity and everything.
Great.
Okay. Where we'll mock all these people behind their backs for all their terrible picks. Okay. Behind their
backs / on something that they can definitely listen to.
Yeah. Okay. Is my audio okay?
Lurum, Hogsund.
Okay, you're good. All right. That could be your new, like, when someone's about to go on air and they want to warm up their throat.
Lurum, Hogsund.
Okay.
Oslo. I'm gonna try and say it like a local too. Oslo.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are hoping to save on shipping costs, which means I'm going to need to win this I blew it already. This Keeping Karlsson playoff pool draft because everyone else is very far away. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me, as always, is my co-host and very good friend, Brian Com.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody, and hello to a few special friends that we'll introduce in a moment. With me, including Elon, are the final four, the last four competitors standing in the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, for which we are presenting the final round draft today. On this very episode, just to like lay it out, I already forget. Was it 96? I should have looked this up before. We start with an immense amount of people. This will be the fourth round of drafting in the playoff pool. So whoever is here with us today, that's not me, drafted and survived, finished in a high enough standings position to advance to the next round 3 times, including the most recent time where you had to be the number 1 team out of 9 in your division to be able to move forward. So big congratulations to Elon, and I'll introduce everybody else in a moment. But first, we should mention that we're presented by Dobber Hockey.
Of course, yes. But yeah, to bury the lead. Oh yeah.
What you're gonna?
I have to correct you on a bunch of things now.
Oh my god.
Of course, it's Brian. By the way, it was final. Yes, Brian, let us do that. First, I'll mention it was 8 people in the divisions for the last round, not 9, but still very tough to win. And your boy, Elon, pulled it off. People listened to our draft a couple weeks ago when we drafted for round 3, the one that you and I were both in. And I had a miracle night yesterday with the Islanders to help me push through. But we'll talk about that in a second. But yes, first, let's talk about DobberHockey.com, which is the #1 fantasy hockey website out there. And we're super happy to be able to say we're presented by them. You've got all of the information there that you need to be successful at fantasy. Articles every day, your daily ramblings talking about the latest of what's happening. Anytime there's a trade like this Jake Allen trade, which we'll get to in a little bit, they're breaking down the fantasy impact, plus all the tools over at Frozen Tools. I love Dobber Hockey. I'm so happy to be presented by them. So yeah, that's that, dobberhockey.com. But okay, Brian, with that, yes, we've got our final 4. and I'm one of them, which I'm very happy about. And the draft is scheduled to start in 1 minute. So maybe we could just quickly go over the settings before I hand this over to you, because you're going to be the host and I'm going to be the drafter. But same as last time, to anyone who listened a couple episodes ago, we're each going to be drafting 10 players. There's only 4 of us now. So it's 7 forwards, 2 defense, and 1 team. And the team gets 1 point for a win and 2 points for a shutout, which was huge for me and my Islanders. And aside from that, and points only for the skaters, just goals and assists. And this is the first one, Brian, where we're going to have some strategy involved, because this is going to go for 2 rounds. So you got to kind of pick the team. Before we were able to just draft which players we thought would get the most points in a round. Now you kind of want a player who's going to make it to the finals and give you 2 rounds of production instead of 1. But okay, the draft has started. So let me hand it over to you, Brian. You are the host and I am just a lowly participant.
Well, you say that after pumping yourself up to being this amazing, fantastic fantasy player. But yeah, first pick belongs to Andreas, who has survived to the final round here. Andreas, do you want to come on, introduce yourself, and make your first pick? Tell us where you're drafting from.
So hi everyone. So my name is Andreas. I am drafting from Oslo, Norway. I think probably it will be the most shipping cost will be probably to me. So hopefully I will end up.
So we're rooting against you.
Rooting against me, right? Yeah, I am on the clock as it seems.
I'll pause the draft so we can chat for a little bit.
Yeah. So Andres, tell me how did you get to this round? Like who has been like what have been 1 or 2 of the key picks that have brought you all the way to the final 4?
Yes, in the first round, I picked last, and I was lucky enough to get Sebastian Aho, and we all know what he did in the qualifier. And for some reason, people didn't want to touch Jonathan Taves. I ended up picking him up very late, and he had a monster qualifying round. And then from then onwards, I've been picking first, and I've been lucky enough to have McKinnon and Rantanen throughout the whole, like the last 2 rounds. I'm very happy that they didn't lose 4-1 in that series, because then my chances would have been, basically 0. I got 2 or 3 shutouts from Leonard, which I think was, I guess we can call that very lucky. For some reason, Vancouver didn't want to shoot the puck, so it was a good one. Yeah.
So you got an early advantage because we sorted draft order beyond the first round was random, but then if you finished well, you got to draft well, and it wasn't a snake. So you got, if there were 8 teams in your division, you got first pick and then 9th pick and so on. So way to take advantage of that, because there are some first seeds that definitely fell along the way and weren't able to take advantage. So while you made it sound so easy, I got McKinnon and Rantanen because I was picking first. It clearly wasn't. So congratulations on making it this far. And now would be a great time to tell us, now that you're picking first once again, who's it going to be for your final team?
Yeah, so I have been trying. I mean, I think for this round, I think there is actually more strategy now than in the previous rounds. There are some clear separation between some tiers here, and I think the biggest separation between like the top guys and the lower tier guys are on D. And I think the privilege of picking first is to have the opportunity to open up on D, right, and not end up with the 4th best D man. So I have decided to go for Shea Theodore for my first pick.
All right. So Andreas filling out one of his 2 D spots right off the top with Shea Theodore. So I guess, there's only 4 participants, so a D run might not mean quite the same thing as it would in another, but Andreas getting out ahead of that. For the record, Shea Theodore was picked on average 17th in the last round. He goes first in the final round. And he's had a fantastic playoffs, right? 16 points, 15 games. We've had a lot of conversations in our patrons only Facebook group and Discord server about just how, like, what tier of defenders he's entered into. So Andreas is clearly bought in on Shea Theodore having and I guess Vegas having a long and illustrious playoff run right to the end. Thank you, Andreas, for your first pick. And that brings us to our second pick, which is Vegard. Vegard, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
So Vegard is another, we have more Norwegian representation here. Vegard, where are you?
I am on the west coast of Norway, so a small town called Haugesund.
Yes, Hugsund.
Almost, yeah.
We tried to sort this out before going on air, and it failed mostly.
It was better before.
Yeah. Oh well. I wish go on the YouTube video. You can go back and listen to me get it right. Yeah. Okay. So Vegard from Hogsund is up second. Vegard, can you tell us a little bit about what picks you think are most responsible for getting you to where you stand today?
Well, I also started off drafting very late in the first round, but managed to get a few good picks. I almost can't remember who I got that first round, but I think I finished second in that round. I got guys like JT Miller, I think, which has helped me almost all the way. And I moved on to the second round, and the second round was much better. I won that round. And finished with a lot of points ahead, I think. Don't really remember who I got there.
Yeah, let's focus even on just like the latest round, because we're all winners now. We don't need to talk about the
I
old
can't even
rounds.
remember.
But like you won your last round, right? And it was pretty close, if I recall.
Yeah, that was really, really close. And your Islanders team helped me out in the end. And I kind of gambled on the Islanders' second line, the BBB line, with Beauvillier and Brock Nelson and Bailey. And the whole round was more of like a roller coaster for me, because I started off good. I picked McKinnon first, which was an easy pick. And he and Girard got a lot of points the first night. And then it all went south, and I was like sixth for a long time, and 5-6 points behind the leader. But suddenly the Islanders guys started producing one match, and I got 5 points out of one match from that line. And from then on, I was on top, and until the last night, because then I was 1 point behind Maxwell. But still had these 3 Islanders guys left, and they produced 6 points in the last night, and I won the division with 5 points.
That's incredible. So like you have McKinnon, but he wasn't even, he was pointless in the last game of that series, and you're probably tearing your hair out and being like, oh my gosh. And you see the Canucks being shut out, barely getting any offense against Las Vegas, and oh no. And then of all teams to save you, Josh Bailey, Anthony Beauvillier, and Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders, who you picked in succession in your draft around 4, 5, and 6, took you all the way through to the end. So with that said, you can't take Nathan McKinnon first this time. You also can't take JT Miller. You took second in the last round. So who are you going to kick off your final 4-way competition draft pick with?
Yeah, well, since Andreas started off with a D, I'll probably have to continue with the D. And I want to take, I would want to take Heiskanen, but I do think Tampa is going to go through to the final. So I'm going to go with Victor Hedman.
All right. So Vegard has Victor Hedman added to his team as a D-run, comes out of nowhere and continues. I guess if you think Vegas and Tampa are the Cup finalists and you want to have the 1D, like the best scoring D on each of those teams, and really they're quite a bit ahead of the second best scoring D on their respective teams too. Not a bad strategy. So Elon, I'm going to ask you if you're disappointed in a second, but first, I will actually, no, I'm not going to mention that. I will just say Shea Theodore, the second highest defensive scorer in these playoffs, and Victor Hedman is the 4th highest defensive scorer in these playoffs. So there's a certain a couple guys on a certain, or I guess I won't be too specific. I won't get.
No,
into
you could be,
details.
Brian. It's a live show. You can say the stats. We all know them.
A couple guys on a certain team getting disrespected or left behind, and it must be because maybe we're not high on Dallas's prospects of advancing. But Heiskanen is the leading, not just defensive playoff point getter, but total playoff point getter for our pool this year. 21 points. 3 more than next best Braden Point, who has played fewer games. And then Klingberg ranks third amongst D in point scoring. Elon, it's your turn. Why don't you say hi and introduce yourself? Where are you drafting from?
I'm here in Toronto. I'm the only North American representation here. It's an all Nordic countries draft aside from me. Very excited to be here. I went into yesterday's Islanders Philly game down by 4, and I didn't have the tiebreaker. So I feel very bad for Rob, who I think had all the very good reasons, including me almost like acquiescing, being like, all right, Rob, you got it. Congratulations. And he had Matt Barzal and Anders Lee in that game. And I had Nelson and Pulock and Islanders goalies. And somehow, Barzal and Lee do nothing. And Brock Nelson, 3 points. Pulock finally wakes up, gets an assist, get the shutout. I blew past him, and here I am. So very exciting. And I'm proudly wearing my Islanders hat now. And I am shook by these first 2 picks being defensemen. This changes everything, I feel like.
Yeah, I want to ask how that changes your strategy. But first, I'd love for you to share how you ended up with your Islanders goalies at the last draft. For those who didn't listen to the live episode of that, it's pretty funny how you got them. Like, by all means, I don't think you should have.
No, I think you remember incorrectly. You were saying that yesterday, like someone took another team and then a guy was like, oh, I'm so glad you took that team so that I don't have to take the Islanders. And then the guy who wanted the Philly goalies got the Philly goalies. But it was like, I was always planning on taking the Islanders. And I don't like, it's not as if, I think what you're trying to suggest is that I was going to take some other team and then I just happened to get the Islanders because they were the only option left. But I promised to you, I was planning on waiting to the last round and I was hoping to get the Islanders. I've been a fan of theirs. And they beat Philly, and it's not that big a surprise to me, to be honest. Like, I'll just throw this out there. I don't know if people remember this, but the New York Islanders were a strong team this season. Like, their final record doesn't necessarily reflect that, but they actually were 16-3-1 to start the season. And they were actually 33-16-6 after 55 games. They just kind of crumbled at the end, and Arthur Staple blamed it on injuries. So this was a good team for most of the year, and now they're showing it. But I guess we can talk about that more at the end of the show. I should probably get to my pick, eh?
Yeah, I don't want to take any credit away from you, but you got the Islanders second last out of goalies. I took the Boston goalies right ahead of you, so that's on me. And then the Dallas goalies went before that by, I'm pretty sure, someone who did not want to take the Islanders goalies because they were playing Philly, and the Philly goalies were taken earlier. But in any case, it paid off for you to wait out and thinking you could get the Isles goalies. You did. So congratulations. And they brought you all the way here to your first pick of the Final Four KKPP round. How are you adjusting to this D run early on? You going to follow suit? Are you going to set a new tone? What's the plan?
Yeah, well, I remember I was thinking going into this, I wonder if I should take the first D with my third pick. And I was also looking at Theodore and Hedman as the top 2, or like a Heiskanen or Klingberg, except, I like the Tampa and Vegas teams to be the ones that move forward. Like, most likely, obviously, it's very hard to predict. Now this changes everything. I think Andreas is probably very happy that Vegard took a defenseman, because that means that Andreas might really luck out by getting Theodore and still a really amazing forward with his next pick, actually, for sure, because I think there's 3 forwards that really jump out as like the clear top 3. So I don't know. All that said, I got to take the guy that I took first in the last pool when I had third pick, and he got me here. So give me Kucherov. He's freaking Nikita Kucherov, and he had a great last round. And so, yeah, hopefully we'll see which defenseman I end up with at the end of all this, but got to go with the guy who I think was my chalk pick as the number 1 overall in this draft.
Okay, so Elon has the first forward off the board, Nikita Kucherov. And Elon, I wonder if are you feeling a little burned? Because you took Quinn Hughes at last round as your second pick. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have a great series, right? No one in Vancouver did.
Well, I mean, let's not get crazy.
Okay, you're right.
It was like a point per game.
Yeah, he still had 6 points in 6 games. I'm just bringing it up now.
7
when
games.
Vancouver scored, he was a part of it. But I was curious. There were a couple games where he didn't play a lot, so I was wondering if he was injured. But then he finished with a 25-minute game. Anyway, enough about Quinn Hughes, because you just picked Nikita Kucherov, and that brings us to the final selection of our first round, which is coming from Cupful Tier 1 competitor, Ricard, who's actually replacing David, who earned a spot but couldn't make it. So Ricard finished just 1 point behind David in his division, being the next person worthy of the spot. So welcome, Ricard. You've got a chip on your shoulder here.
Yeah, definitely. That's big. And I'm in a league with 2 Norwegians as well. So I really have to show the best hockey.
So Ricard, you're in Sweden. Where in Sweden are you?
Yeah, I'm in a small town called Lerum at the west coast, just outside of Gothenburg. And yeah, that's where I am.
Okay, so we've got 2 Norwegians and a Swede. I'm starting to wonder, you guys are ahead in time zones. There's some, that's a stupid joke. I was going to say, like, did you know the results before they happened? Anyway, so Ricard, tell us how you got here. How'd you have such a good round last round?
Yeah, I managed to get ahead and win the round before. So the last round I picked first, and I got McKinnon, and then just felt to me that I think Rantanen dropped, so I picked him up. And as my third pick, I just had Landeskog sitting there, so finished up the first line in Colorado, and well, they performed for me, definitly.
You must have been very happy when they came back from 3-1 to extend the series.
Yeah, I was actually kind of happy that Dallas won like the first game, maybe even the second, just because I was a little bit afraid that Colorado was gonna do a short run and finish them off with like 4-1 or something. So I was kind of happy that I got more games out of them. But yeah, I was really shocked that Colorado came back. So my last round, I got like, I think 4 Islanders, Lee and Pajot and Bailey and Pulock. So the first round, I really had players from different teams, and the last round I really stacked up on those 2.
How impressive, how incredible is it? Like, there's a theme here of all the teams in our last round, and it's that the Islanders were kingmakers, which we would have never expected from the 24th highest scoring team this year. They actually had 1 fewer goal than the Ottawa Senators in the regular season, but hey, all of a sudden they're carrying all 4 finalists all the way to the end of the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool. So Ricard, let's finish off the first round here. Who are you going to go with? Defense, forward? Let us know.
I'm going with the player I actually think I would have picked at the top if I had the first pick. So let's just go with the player who I think has the most fantasy points per game so far in Brayden Point.
Okay, there he is. Yeah, Brayden Point, the playoff point leader. So Elon deciding to go Kucherov, and I raised an eyebrow just because, there is someone on Kucherov's team that's been outperforming him. So Ricard, clearly you think that's going to continue. Brayden Point, behind only Miro Heiskanen, is the second top scorer in the playoffs, and he actually leads all playoff scorers in points per game. Just a smidge above Miro Heiskanen. So he's got that going for him. And of course, Brayden Point is just a smidge above Kucherov in that measure, 2 points total. So Ricard grabbing a pretty good, from the 4th spot, a pretty good first round pick, which brings us back to the start. Andreas, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing good. I was hoping that one of these Tampa guys would be there at 5. But I guess there are three players. Kirivanta is definitely someone that you need to have at this point.
As long as Pagliano stays injured.
Yeah, I do feel like a little bit of an outsider because I haven't owned a single Islanders player throughout the whole playoffs, and disrespecting Dallas. I guess I have been disrespecting the Islanders throughout the whole playoffs. But I think at this point I will continue to do so because it has worked, and I will pick a player that I believe has much more in him, and someone that I believe will be there until the end, and that's Mark Stone.
Okay, Mark Stone, who we retweeted a tweet from Dmitry Filipovich yesterday of just a great visual summary of all the times Mark Stone makes everyone else look so stupid with how great he is at taking the puck away, which we've been on about for a long time. Like we love Mark Stone, not just for what he does on the score sheet, but he is doing great things on the score sheet. The 9th ranked scorer in the playoffs so far. And I'm just seeing where he was picked. He's been like you're picking him right where he's been picked on average. In the last round, he was picked between the 6th and 7th pick overall. So you grabbing him at 5, I don't think it's too early. He was picked at 5 twice in the last round. So this is very consistent as Mark Stone seems to be at scoring. And that brings us to Vegard's next pick. Vegard, you're on the clock. Do you have someone in mind?
Well, I was hoping for Stone, Point, or Kucherov to fall to me, but now that they're all gone and Heiskanen is still there, I might as well finish off the D, I think, because it's all about the points here.
Okay, so Vegard going with Miro Heiskanen, which gives Vegard, I'm just looking at his D now, he's got Hedman and he's got Heiskanen, so he could potentially have the 2 top D going to the Stanley Cup Finals if the chips fall right. So Vegard positioning himself nicely, or he could have 0, I suppose. That's the other side of this coin. But Vegard filling out his D-core before Elon and Ricard have even gotten to pick 1. Elon, I heard you groan.
Brutal. I thought at the very least, I thought that Heiskanen would fall since Vegard already had a D. I thought he'd try to go for a forward now, but no, this is not going the way I expected. By the way, I wanted to point out that I think it's really funny that Ricard is here, even though, he came second, like obviously still very well earned, but it reminds me of like how in the draft lottery, how like Team Chaos ended up winning, and it's like one of the play-in teams ended up winning the draft lottery. So I think it'll only be, it'll be fitting now if Ricard wins this whole thing to just keep the theme of the chaos of these playoffs.
It would be very 2020. So by the way, just before you pick Elon, I'll mention Heiskanen's like draft stock obviously has risen massively, 9 points in 7 games in the last round. In the last set of drafts, he was picked on average 17th, 18th overall, and here he goes 6th overall. Elon, are you gonna pick someone who's traditionally been at the top of the draft, or are you gonna also pick someone whose stock has been slowly rising through the playoffs?
Yeah, this is tricky because at this point the defensemen are drying up. There's still like some like elite forwards out there, but I think I'll just have to. And I kind of like, Vegas to go forward over Dallas, but I also thought that Colorado would go forward over Dallas. So I guess just I'll lock in John Klingberg, who I think there's a big teardrop after him when we look at the remaining D. So, I know from experience that my Islanders defenseman was one of the reasons I almost didn't make it to this round. So, yeah, I guess I'll take Klingberg. Was hoping to get Heiskanen, but who knows? In the last game, Heiskanen was on the top power play. Maybe Klingberg takes that back and Dallas shakes things around, and maybe they could be close, but definitely hasn't been that close this playoffs. But, Klingberg still having himself like a very strong playoffs compared to his regular season, right? Like we're looking at 12 points in 15 games, so nothing to shake your fist at.
Yeah, Klingberg has been fantastic and had a solid last round too, 5 points in 7 games. I'm pretty sure you mocked me for picking him as early as I did last round. Of course, I didn't advance, you did, but I just want to point out that he's been 12 points in 15 games. Again, these Dallas D leading the way. Elon, you shed a teardrop when you heard that Heiskanen was picked, and now you're avoiding a teardrop with Klingberg being chosen as your first defenseman. Ricard, do you agree? Do you agree with Elon that there's a teardrop, and what are you going to do about it for how you approach D here.
Yeah, it's. I mean, in quality, it's a tier drop. I'd say. But if you take in the strategy with how long you think teams are going to survive, then well, it's the NHL. I mean, it's Dallas might win the cup, but I think most have Vegas over them. So I don't know. I'm not. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of D spots being filled on the other teams. That means it's not going to be too many more Ds that's going to be picked. So I'm not stressed about that. I think it's there's definitely 8 okay or good defensemen out there. So I'll be good on D. But I'm thinking about me being Team Chaos and everything. I'm thinking about switching up a bit. And in the last round, I picked the team in my final round. But I think this time around, I'm looking at Tampa as that I think have the biggest chance to reach in the finals. And maybe even, who knows, maybe even get a shutout or 2 over there. So I'm going Tampa here.
Okay, so Ricard is going with the Tampa team goalies. And remember, your team goalies can max out at 8 points. They can max out at 16 points if they get a shutout win for every win. But each win is worth 1 point. Each shutout is worth a bonus point. So Ricard placing his bet on a cup finalist and potential cup winner in Tampa. Interestingly, outside of Heiskanen and Klingberg, everybody chosen. Every forward and I'm trying to. Everyone else has been Tampa or Vegas. There's one team that is still missing and has 0 players selected so far. So we'll see how long that takes to get the Islanders on the board. But Ricard going with the team, being first to pick his team goalies and suggesting that there are 4 defensemen already picked. There's only 2 others that are going to be picked not by him, and he's good to wait. That brings us back to the top of the draft board for the start of the 3rd round. Andreas, where are you leaning?
Where am I leaning? I'm looking at the players, right? And I have made a list, and I when it comes to separating these players, it's like chaos. And I am looking at Tampa, and I am considering going a little bit off the board, picking a player that could either drag me down to the dawns of hell or continuing on his point streak. And I will, and there might be a player coming back from injury that might affect his deployment, but I'm just going to go all in on the good old Ondrej Palat. Okay,
Ondrej Palat, the hero of rounds. I can't keep track of because of the play-ins, the hero of the last round for Tampa Bay, 7 points in 5 games. Before that, he had just 2 points in 8 games in the round robin and playoffs. So Andreas hoping that the last round is the beginning of a trend of secondary primary scoring from a secondary source in Ondrej Palat, and of course leaning towards saying, hey, I'm going to pick a more depth player on Tampa because I have more confidence they're going to go far than maybe a higher tier player from a team that he's not as confident in. Which brings us to Vegard, who is Vegard, you're poised to pick your first forward unless you're going goalies.
Well, yeah, I have to pick a forward now. And I think I'm going to go for a new team, but not the Islanders. So I'm going to go with Max Pachuretti. And hopefully he will get some points alongside Mark Stone.
Okay, so Max Pachuretti, who has had a shorter playoffs than most and started pretty quietly with just 2 points in his first 4 games, but really came alive in the last round with 5 points in 7 games against Vancouver, 4 of those goals. So Max Pachuretti, and of course people were a little iffy on him in the previous rounds just because of his injury status. He's been picked 15th, 16th overall in this draft. He is now gone in the 10 spot. So Max Pachuretti's draft stock rising as other players fall away. So Vegard has Pachuretti. Elon is on the clock. Where's your head at?
Oh man, it's tricky now. So yeah, I guess everyone's draft stock is going to go up at this point, on average by double, since there's half as many players available. But yeah, Pachuretti had a good round. He would have been a good pick. But now that I have Klingberg, it's like, I guess the smart strategy is to not take Vegas guys, which makes it very tricky, Brian. So then,
is
like,
it the smart strategy? Like, I guess this is what you're thinking. You don't want to get, you want to pick a side. You don't want to be in the middle.
Well, yeah, otherwise it'll be tough to win. If someone has all, Vegas and someone has all Dallas and I have a couple from each, then probably I'm not going to lose. Or
right, but if you
win.
have a couple from each, that might decrease the chances that somebody else stacks up on them.
Yeah, true.
Sorry,
but
it's more difficult here.
You are making things very difficult for me. You know what? I'll just go all in on Dallas maybe at this point.
I love that. Okay, keep going. I love that you're saying that, and I don't even know what it means. Like, who do you go all in on Dallas with?
Yeah, because Sagan hasn't been doing much. He's like pointless in his last few games. So what do I do? Let's go with. Oh man, you know what? Actually, scratch everything. I'll just take Matt Barzal, even though I have Kucherov. I don't know why. I'm totally just flipping my thing here. Maybe I'm gonna have Kucherov, and then. Now that Palat is gone and Point is gone and Hedman is gone, Tampa, I don't know. Maybe I'll switch over to Islanders. So I don't know. This might be a really dumb move, but I'm switching to Barzal.
All right. Matt Barzal with 1T is now Elon's 1C. Way to go, Elon, for making a call there. There's so many paths to the end. We'll see if this was the one to choose. I truly do. I'm sorry if I made you doubt yourself. There are different strategies, right? Like you can stack one or two teams and say, like, these are the teams I'm riding, ride or die, or you hedge your bets a little, and basically your success depends on what the other drafters decided to do and you adapting to that. So we'll see what the trend becomes after a few more rounds. We're on pick 12 with Ricard. Ricard, you have Braden Point and the Tampa goalies. So you're one of these teams that seems to be stacking in one direction. You going to keep going with Tampa, or are you changing course?
I think I'm changing course a bit. With picking Tampa in my latest pick, I kind of hope that someone else of these guys will follow along and pick the goalies from other team, leaving me with more skaters. But I didn't get that goalie run going really. I'm scrambling a bit. There's so way to go. I don't think I'm going Tampa again. I don't think I'm going D. Team that I big hopes are gonna go far. I'm probably go with another guy with similar so with Marcus.
Okay, I am going to wait to see who you click. Okay, it's Jonathan Marchessault. Yeah. We're having some connection issues there. So Ricard goes over to the West, picks Jonathan Marchessault, who has had a good playoffs. Like, you can't say he's had a bad one. 9 points in 13 games, 9 points in 15 games, sorry, which isn't like setting the world on fire in the regular season. We'd be like, but we also that's what we've come to expect from Marchessault. And if you get 2 rounds out of him and he can keep doing that at least, then you're in good shape. So Ricard takes Marchessault, which brings us back to Andreas, who's got Shea Theodore, Mark Stone, and Andre Palat. So Ricard has 2 Lightning and a Golden Knight, and Andreas is the flip with 2 Golden Knights and a Lightning. Andreas, what are you thinking for your 4th pick?
I'm looking at the board again. I think I will continue to stack the Knights, and I think I will go with Riley Smith.
Okay, so another Golden Knight off the board. That's 4 Golden Knights forwards gone, and mostly in the last few picks. So Riley Smith is off the board while Vegard is contemplating his next pick.
Yes.
Yeah. How's that going?
I was really hoping for Riley Smith, but Andreas took him. And I feel like there's a drop now in the Vegas players. So I might just go over to the Islanders. And that's like flipping a coin here.
Yeah, you can't have Barzal because he's
No.
off the board, but we're finally getting some Isles interest in the 4th round here.
And I'm thinking I'm gonna go with Brock Nelson.
Okay, Brock Nelson, like Riley Smith, somebody whose draft stock has just like shot up. Riley Smith has had a huge playoffs. He's been like one of the most reliable Vegas scorers, behind only Mark Stone and Shea Theodore, of course, but up front. So he's been a great forward. And then Brock Nelson, still actually not the Isles leading scorer in these playoffs, but second ahead of Matt Barzal. So 15 points in 16 games for Brock Nelson. Steady Brocky is what I've been calling him. Elon, you have lost the opportunity to stack up on Islanders with Vegard's pick. Are you disappointed?
I'm just kind of disappointed about the whole thing so far, but I'll just maybe that was a crazy move in the last round, having Kucherov and Barzal as my top 2 guys. So I guess I'm just gonna go to this time I am gonna go to Dallas, and I guess I'll take Jamie Benn, who's having a good playoffs. I can't believe going into this playoffs that I would be considering Ben as the top Dallas forward to take, but I guess all that rest helped him out, and he's got his whatever it is here, 12 points, I think, in 15 games.
He's got 13 points in 16, including 9 points in 7 games against Colorado, where he just came. Like he was picked on average 48th overall in our last round of drafts. And here he is going, let's see, he's going 15th. So that's a huge jump for Jamie Benn, who, like you said, Elon, maybe some time off did him good. He can go hard and play his hard-hitting, physical brand of hockey, starting as if he would from the beginning of the season, and he doesn't have to keep it up for a whole lot longer necessarily either.
Yeah, it's pretty wild at this point. There's probably it's like the Islanders, right? Like there's a lot of different players who could end up being the leading scorer in terms of the forwards anyways. So I went Ben. I had Ben in the last round, so he got me here. I might as well keep going.
All right, Jamie Benn is off the board, which brings us to Ricard, who's going to finish off the 4th round and the 16th pick of this final 4 of the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, where it's been amazing. We've redrafted every single round, and it's been so much fun. Like, we're definitely going to do this or something very similar to this again in the future for future playoffs, because playoff pools are hard to really like nail and have fun and stay engaged with. But this one, my goodness. All right, enough about our pool. Ricard, where are you thinking of going with this next pick?
I've really been scrambling around here. It feels like you could go many different places. I'm still not going D, I think, but I'm staying at forward. There's good point getters still there on the board. But I've seen a lot of Dallas lately, and I think that Ben was a great pick. But I feel like I got 2 guys who's really look good, and I'm going Joe Pavelski, I think.
Okay, Joe Pavelski. If you would have told me that he would be, well, I guess I would have said he could be the 4th Dallas player picked in a playoff pool, but like not behind the defenseman. To be the 2nd forward picked in a playoff pool is feels crazy. But if you look at the way the Dallas forwards have gone, it's not at all a stretch. 12 points in 16 games for Pavelski. He's been very consistent. He had a big hat-trick game, but like he seems to have a decent floor, and he seems to be feeling really good about himself these days, which we did not see in the regular season. So Ricard is banking that the good times will keep rolling for Joe Pavelski in Dallas, which ends our 4th round. Elon, should we thank our sponsor at this point?
Why not, Brian? Good idea. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and pause the draft, and we'll talk about another kind of draft that we've been doing a lot of lately, and those are daily fantasy drafts over on DraftKings. Brian, it's been a blast. We have our patron DraftKings League, which I guess anyone can join. I don't know. Message us at Keeping Karlsson. We'll tell you how to get in. I don't remember what we've decided, but either way, okay, that whole thing was lame. We have our patron DraftKings League. It's really fun. Every day you fill out your team, you have that budget, and you got to figure out what's the smart way to try to predict who's going to do well, but you can't just take all the best players. You guys all know how daily fantasy works. Now it's really tricky since there's going to be only one game per day, but we did one yesterday, and now they have a whole other format where you have to just fill out a team from the game of like 5 players, and you pick one player that's going to like score extra for his points than everyone else, and you choose who you want to assign that spot to. So yeah, it's just like a really fun game to play. Well, we've been playing both for free and for $1 with the patrons, and just having fun, having a little extra skin in the game, especially if your KKPP team has been eliminated. So yeah, DraftKings, aside from hockey, there's other sports out there. You could play them all. Did you know that football is finally back, Brian? And with DraftKings being the leader in one-day fantasy sports, there's like millions of reasons why you should be excited. Specifically, to kick off the football season, DraftKings is giving new users a free shot at a $1 million top prize with a total of $3 million up for grabs for this Thursday's football contest. You could get in on Thursday night's single game showdown in a very easy way. All you have to do is download the DraftKings app and use the promo code Karlsson, and you're going to get a free shot at the $1 million top prize with your first deposit. Nothing adds to the sweat of watching the game like having a shot at $1 million payday.
If there's anything we're looking to do, it's adding to the sweat as we watch the game. So again, download the DraftKings app now. Use the code Karlsson is in Eric's last name. And for a limited time, new users get that free shot at the $1 million top prize and $3 million in total prizes. Don't miss this extra special week 1 bonus. Enter code Karlsson to get a free shot at the $1 million top prize with your first deposit. That's code Karlsson only at DraftKings. Make it rain, spelled as in the Ontario hockey team's last name. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. And if anyone doesn't know the Ontario Reign, they're the Kings affiliate, and it's spelled REIGN, as in a reigning ruler. So make it rain with DraftKings and the LA Kings.
All right. So with that, I guess we're going into the 5th round now.
I just want to compliment you on really selling how football is finally back. I could tell you've been waiting for it.
Brian, you may not know this about me, but I'm a pigskin guy. I like to every Sunday I crack open my Bud Light, and I want to watch the football games, and I'm a big fan of what Tom Brady's going to do this year.
On what team, Eli?
I know he left New England. I was just about to say it and sound smart, but I actually don't know. I don't know. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, that's it. And you mentioned you love the pigskin, but I thought you were a vegetarian.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, actually. Well, do they still make it out of pigs, or is that just a saying at this point? I feel like they should probably have some synthetic material by now.
Someone can maybe look into that for us and tweet us at Keeping Karlsson. What are footballs made of today? Now let's go to Andreas. Andreas, let's get things started. So we finished 4 rounds out of 10. We are at your 5th pick. Do you feel good about what you see so far? Do you feel like you've gotten to take advantage of your first overall status?
I think so. I think at this point, I'm okay with what I've done. I think at this point, probably I should move away from the Knights.
So far you have Mark Stone, Riley Smith, and Shea Theodore on Vegas, and then Palat as your lone non-Vegas player.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm aware that Palat might be a reach. I just needed to have someone there, and I think it's worth, just making sure that you have someone there. And I think Palat was someone that every now and then he delivers. But I think at this point I probably should go either to Islanders or Dallas. And I'm looking at the Islanders, and I feel like they're spreading out their scoring. I feel I can get some of them in a later round. I think at this point for Dallas, I think Denis Gurianov it feels like somehow he is the most trusted forward at this point. When the lines are being juggled, it feels like he is given an opportunity.
All right. Yeah. So somehow is right that he is somehow feels like Dallas's most trusted forward. He ranks as their second leading scorer behind only Miro Heiskanen, 15 points in 16 games, including 8 and 7 in the last round. Picked on average 50th overall in the last round of drafts, and now going at the start of the 5th round here, so 17th overall. A big jump for Gurianov. Interestingly enough, even though being the highest scoring forward in Dallas, he was the third one to be drafted. And I see a similar trend with another team that's still out there who I'll name. I don't want to get too much into table talk here. I don't want to blow up anyone's game, but I will make sure to circle back to it when it happens.
The one piece of feedback we got from the last show is like, just do the table talk. I think it's good.
I'll do the table talk. So yeah, Josh Bailey, the Islanders' leading scorer, has yet to be picked, as has Anthony Beauvillier, who was not so far behind Matt Barzal in scoring so far. So interesting to see that the Isles who have been picked still very justifiable. And this is all like anything can happen over the next 2 rounds. But just like Dallas, people aren't necessarily looking for the top guy. I can say the same thing for Tampa too, because Kucherov went before Point. So there you go. Vegard, you're up. You've got your D. You're set there. You've got Pacharetti and Brock Nelson up front. Where are you thinking of going with this next pick?
I'm thinking of going back to Vegas, actually. Just because I think they're gonna beat Dallas, and I want some more Vegas players to even out the score between me and Andreas. So I'm gonna hope for a William Karlsson comeback.
Okay.
Yeah.
So William Karlsson, who is most recently bumped back up to be reunited with Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault in Game 7 against Vancouver. I'm not sure if Vegas would have considered that a success. It's hard to really measure since Thatcher Demko was so freaking incredible. But if William Karlsson stays, he has not dropped out of the top 6 as a center. So it seems like a pretty safe bet for someone who's going to be in a position to put up points. Even though so far in this postseason, he's been okay. 8 points in 15 games. He had a quiet round last round, but maybe he's just saving it up for this next round. This brings us to Elon's team. Elon, I'm just going to summarize your team so far. You've got Kucherov in Tampa. You've got Barzal playing against Tampa for Long Island. And then you've got Jamie Benn and John Klingberg. You're seeing a lot of Golden Knights go off the board. How does that make you feel with your heavy Dallas investment?
I mean, it's fine, right? At this point, I just got to kind of bank on Dallas. So if people want to take Golden Knights players, I'm probably not going to take one unless like a really good gem falls. And at this point, a lot of them are going. It's interesting, by the way, William Karlsson back playing with Marchessault and Riley Smith. I saw that you commented on our Discord. They're calling it the Lotto line, which I didn't know that was what they were called. Maybe that's like an old-timey name for old-timey from like a couple years ago, back when they were together and crushing it. But for a while, Karlsson was centering Mark Stone. But yeah, so I don't know what's better. I guess it's probably better to play with Mark Stone in the end, but Chandler Stevenson is playing with Mark Stone most recently, and I don't know if he's going to get picked in this draft. I guess we'll see later on. I'm not going to be taking him. I'm going to go, because Brian, you were commenting about how you're surprised when people are taking players that didn't do as well, like so far in the playoffs. And you even mentioned that you raised an eyebrow when I took Kucherov ahead of Braden Point, even though
well, not really. I'm grasping here. Give me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what you're doing. I think you're doing a great job, I should say.
What did you think of that comment?
I thought that, I don't know. It's probably coin flip. I don't know. It was a great comment.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see what you'll say here, because I'm going to take a player who is pointless in his last 4 games, but is the leading scorer in the regular season of everyone left aside from Steven Stamkos, who's injured. So I'm not going to take Stamkos, even though maybe I wonder if, anyway, that's a lot of table talk. But anyways, I wonder if people know who I'm talking about. You must, right, Brian?
Pointless in his last 4, the top score remaining. I have a guess. I have someone highlighted, but I'm not going to say him in case it's not the guy.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you. It's Tyler Seguin. So
yeah, that's who. Okay.
I mean, He's been playing away from. It's been like Radulov, Pavelski, and Ben, or at least in the last game I saw that was a line. But Dallas might shake things up. And at the end of the day, what are we in the 6th round, 5th round? Got to take Sagan. I think, especially if I'm already loading up on Dallas. So we'll see if he wakes up a little bit next round.
So Sagan, we would talk about things you would never predict. Sagan picked after Klingberg, Heiskanen, Pavelski, Ben, and Goryanov on Dallas. So Sagan, the 6th pick on the Dallas Stars, barely fitting in the fantasy top 6 there, which is just wild. But I think that's a swing very much worth taking. I'm sure Tyler Sagan is very driven to turn things around, especially as Dallas gears up for what could be, honestly, this core's last chance at a cup. You wonder just how much Pavelski and Ben and Sagan and Radulov have together as they age together. So going for it, I like it, Elon. Which brings us back to Ricard to finish off the 5th round with the 20th pick of this draft. Ricard has Braden Point, Marchessault, Pavelski, and the Tampa goalies. The only team not represented on your team so far, Ricard, is the New York Islanders. Is that about to change?
Oh no, I'm staying away from those guys. I mean, going a bit deeper, and some of these guys is still going to be around. If they're still around, I mean the Baileys and the Paviliers, then you got to go there. But it's I really believe in Tampa in that match. So I'm staying off there a bit. I feel it's more open in the West, so I'm comfortable picking guys from both teams there, and I'm staying with the Dallas picks here, and I see first power play Alex Radulov still on board, so that's where I'm going.
All right, Alex Radulov had a huge series, including that last game where I think his most valuable contribution, even beyond the scoring, was when he got called. Now I can't remember. He took a penalty and it seemed legit, but he was like losing his mind about it. And then minutes after he got out of the box, he drew an even up call from JT Compher, who did not trip him, but Radulov went down. And I think that was in the ref's mind. I think Radulov played that brilliantly, and Dallas scored on the preceding power play. So Alex Radulov, valuable in so many ways, but especially last round with 8 points in 7 games, is a bit of a Dallas run continues. We've had Ben, Pavelski, Gurianov, then William Karlsson, then Sagan and Radulov. So we've had 5 Dallas players taken in the last 6 picks. Andreas, is there anyone left to pick out from that Dallas Stars roster? Or do you have to go elsewhere now?
No, I think I have to go elsewhere. And I think at this point, I will have to choose my first Islanders of the playoffs. And there are 2, right? But I think if Islanders want to score, it's on the power play, and I think Bailey is the one that had the chance to probably get his secondary assists on that power play. I think he has 6, whereas I think Pavilier only has 3 or 4.
Yeah, well, in the last round, Josh Bailey had no goals, but 7 assists. This is his game, right?
Yeah. So I think, it's on the power play. It will happen. Hopefully Tampa doesn't sweep the Islanders. So I will go for Bailey at this point.
All right. Josh Bailey, finally off the board. I've been staring him at the top of my draft board, sandwiched between Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov for what might be the only time in his career. But way to go, Josh Bailey. A lot of these anonymous-ish Isles who we've talked about on the show, but generally don't get their due, like Bailey and Nelson. And I guess I'll add Beauvillier to that list too. And beyond, like you could even look at a guy like Casey Zizekas finally getting their due. Jordan Eberle is still out there. Sorry, I hope it didn't blow up anyone there. But a lot of these guys who've been sort of toiling away for a team that doesn't let them score a whole lot of points, finally getting noticed by NHL fans all over the world. So good times for them. Josh Bailey is gone. He's off the board, the third leading scorer of these playoffs with 17 points in 16 games, which brings us to Vegard's 6th pick.
Yes, I was actually planning on waiting with the teams, but I feel like there's 2 favorites, and that's Tampa and Vegas. And since Vegas is still available and Leonard is playing great, I'm going to go with Vegas.
All right, so Vegas is off the board again as the team goalies. So very interesting, because in the last round of drafts, the team goalies went late. Like they went in the 8th, 9th, 10th rounds for the most part. But I guess there's only 4 teams to pick from, and you're looking at 2 rounds worth of games. So it could be a bigger difference between a set of goalies that gets you 8 points versus a set of goalies that gets you 2. So a reasonable swing from Vegard to grab Vegas, and Ricard also grabbed Tampa earlier. So that leaves just the Islanders and Stars left as the remaining team goalies. Elon, any intention on going with one of them with this pick?
No, I don't think so. I think I'll be okay with either of them at this point. I've got Barzal on my team, and I've got a few Stars, as we've discussed. So maybe I'll stack up more on the Islanders at this point. There's still there's been a few taken, and it's so hard to know who's next. I feel like it could go in a lot of different ways, including like the line mates of Matt Barzal are still available. So I guess I'll take Eberle, just because like Anders Lee seems to, I don't know, I guess I shouldn't be talking about, but like Anders Lee, well, I'll tell you why I'm not taking him is because he had those like 3 games in a row with goals, and then he goes quiet, but he's not getting assists. So I feel like Eberle at least is getting more consistent points overall, and we'll see. It's weird how like Barzal hasn't even been on the top power play. It seems like it's like the Barzal, Lee, and Eberle power play trio doesn't go out as often as the one with Beauvillier and Nelson. So we'll see what happens in the next round. So yeah, maybe this is a dumb pick, but give me Jordan Eberle.
Well, you know how much I love Jordan Eberle. I've had him in a couple rounds of the playoff pool so far, and he hasn't let me down yet. He's, like I said, another guy making a name for himself. By the way, how cuckoo are the stat lines for all the New York Islanders last round? Like, you just look at Bailey and Eberle, no goals, but 13 assists. So it's like you either score the goals or you get the assist. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of in between, although Brock Nelson, of course, is exactly the kind of guy who does both with 4 of each. But usually you don't see 2 huge assist getters, especially up front, maybe on the back end. So Elon has taken Eberle, which brings us to Ricard, who will close out the 6th round with the 24th overall pick. Ricard, you've got a couple Stars, couple Lightning, 1 Golden Knight. You might be the only team remaining without an Islander. Last round, I think I asked you if you would go for one. You said no. How about this round?
No.
Okay, I'm going to stop asking.
Yeah. I've thought about it, but I think it's the best way to win this is maybe to try to stay on a line, and if not too like good of a player falls too far, I'm probably keeping my hands from that team. I think. I feel like I'm looking at the power play setup for Tampa, and I'm seeing a lot of Alex Killorn, and looking at his stat line, it doesn't seem like he had too many points the last games. But it feels like with those players, I mean, eventually a puck or two must like hit him somewhere before it goes into the net. So I'm loading up more on Tampa and going with Alex Killorn.
Okay, so Ricard adds Alex Killorn to his stable of Lightning, which include the team goalies and Braden Point. The power play deployment is definitely interesting, and Alex Killorn is a guy who we saw him cash out for the first half of this season, right? He and Brian Rust were just on these tears, and of course Killorn fell off, but so did his deployment. Chicken or egg question around there, but maybe Killorn can put together a great couple rounds here. The Lightning have played fewer games than most, I think all the other teams remaining. So Killorn has 7 points in 13 games, 3 points in just 5 games played in the last round. So they might be flying a little under the radar because they've played 2 or 3 games fewer than all the other teams remaining. But I guess not if we have guys like Killorn and Palat being drafted already. So that concludes the 6th round. Andreas, we're about to begin round 7 of 10. Who gets the honors?
Well, I mean, there are several ways you could go at this point. I'm looking at the D. I think I will leave the team goalies for now. I picked Bailey, and I'm not quite sure why, honestly. But I think if I gamble on Bailey, I probably should gamble on the other B. So I think I will choose a couple of Islanders, and hopefully somehow they manage to squeeze out 5, 6, 7 games or so. So I think I will go for Beauvillier.
All right. So Beauvillier is off the board. The other killer bee over in Long Island, these playoffs so far. He started really strong in these playoffs, Beauvillier. He had, 9 points in his first 9 games. But in that Philly series, he was really quiet, just 3 points over 7 games. But the ice time was still there. He actually, the ice time was still there. So he's still getting the same opportunities. I haven't seen his deployment change a whole lot. In fact, he had 3 games to begin the series where he had 5 or more shots on goal, which is fantastic. I love to see that. Then he had 3 shots in each of his next 3 games, although some of those included overtime, which helped him get to that number. Point being, Beauvillier has not, his scoring might have disappeared, but he hasn't. So I think that's a clever look to hope for a resurgence from him. Doubling down on the Islanders is what Andreas is doing with that. And that brings us to Vegard, who has his 2 defensemen, has his team goalies, has 4 forwards left to pick. So Vegard, there's not much suspense in what position, but I have lots of suspense about which player.
Yeah, well, I think I need more Tampa because I consider them one of the favorites. And since Andreas is using my strategy from last round with stacking up on the BBB line, I'm going to go with a playoff guy called Blake Coleman.
Okay, Blake freaking Como. Coleman. I'm like, I was trying to buy myself time because I'm like, is he playing? Is he? But yeah, so Blake Coleman makes a lot more sense. 7 points in 13 games so far these playoffs. Very similar stat line to someone like Alex Killorn. Very similar deployment to, you've got a mid or even bottom sixer in Tampa who's just going to get opportunities while other teams focus in. And Tampa, I made the point last round, is a team that has that depth where it's like if their top line doesn't get it, they don't look like they have a ton of secondary and tertiary scoring, especially with Stamkos out of the picture. But they're not doing so bad with guys like Killorn and Coleman pitching in. So Coleman is now off the board, who had a great round, by the way, last round, 4 points in 5 games. So he made the most of that Bruin series. Elon, by the way, I guess I'm curious to know, maybe I'll ask everybody the next question I'm going to ask you when it's your turn to pick. Have you been sniped yet? I feel like there have been a couple times where you haven't really known which way you're going. But Elon, were you thinking specifically of picking someone like Blake Coleman with your next pick?
No, I was thinking Blake Como, but luckily he's still around.
And he's in the playoffs too. Like he's with Dallas. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, on the FCC line, Faxa, Cogliano, Como, but that got torn apart in the last game because Cogliano was injured, which let Kiviranta come in and be a hero with a hat trick. And I thought that, Andreas, you were going to take Kiviranta in the first round. Now you've let him fall all this way. I think my biggest snipe was actually those 2 defensemen taken in the first 2 rounds. That really threw me. I had a whole different plan for this draft. Now it looks like I'm loading up on Dallas and the Islanders, the 2 underdogs. So I'm sure I'm the underdog to the listeners, but who knows if those 2 teams move forward, I think I got this. And so I'm gonna
Elon,
keep
out
up.
Of your 6 picks, sorry to interrupt you. Out of your 6 picks, though, 5 of them come from Dallas and the Islanders.
Yeah, and I have Kucherov, who I guess I'm banking on just a 7-game series with the Islanders winning in game 7 and Kucherov getting like whatever 13 points in those 7 games, kind of like what McKinnon did at the last round. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Dallas. I think that we saw Gurionov go super high in this draft, so might as well take a guy who's also having a good playoffs, plays on the same line as him, plays on the same power play as him. You got to imagine if Gurionov is going to do well, so will Rupe Hintz, right? So give me Hintsy.
Rupe Hintz was Mr. Irrelevant in Division 1 of the last round, picked 80th overall. Yeah, 10. Yeah, I might not have that quite right. But anyway, Rupe Hintz was picked towards the bottom end of every draft, averaging 72nd overall. So Elon grabs him 21st overall here, which again, with so many players out of the playoff pool, doesn't look as big a disparity. And I don't think it's a reach either. 6 points in 7 games. And Elon, your roster is looking real good. If Dallas goes far, Elon has Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Rupe Hintz, and John Klingberg. So I would even go as far to say if Dallas can get out of this round, Elon, you'd be a huge favorite.
I mean, it's a big if, but I'll take it. I don't want to have to ship a hoodie to frickin' Norway or Sweden, okay? I just want to go pick it up down the street.
Yeah, well, I think it still ships from America, so I don't know if that's an option, but we can look into it.
I guess we could also like find a Nordic supplier of hoodies, and maybe like we haven't ordered the hoodie yet, so maybe we'll figure something out. Maybe we won't have to pay too much extra. But I'm trying to save us money, Brian. You should be rooting for me.
I'm rooting. Yes, absolutely. I mean, on the one hand, we'd save a few bucks. On the other hand, I'd have to listen to you talk about it. So I would be very proud of you, though. I am rooting. I'm rooting for everyone. You're all my favorite children.
Calm down.
Ricard, you're up. So same question to you. Has there been a snipe? Has Elon sniped you at any point this draft? Was Hintz a snipe? You have 2 stars yourself. Were you looking for a third?
I don't think I'm not looking at that right now, and I don't think I've been sniped earlier either. And that's mainly because I mean, to be sniped, I need to know who I want to pick before it's my turn, and it doesn't really feel like I've been there for a few rounds now. There's, as I said earlier, there's a lot of ways it could go. So it's I don't know if. If I'd had a good strategy, I might have been sniped. But I'm as earlier.
Your answer is essentially, I don't know what I'm doing, so I can't tell if I've been sniped.
Correct.
Great.
So
I love the honesty.
Basically, I'm just closing my eyes and pointing, and where I'm looking now and closing, opening my eyes and pointing is someone who's not getting too much ice time at 5-on-5, but I play on P2, but has been making the most of it. And I'm looking at the opponents to Dallas. I'm looking at Alex.
All right, so Alex Tuch is off the board, who has had like these moments. I mean, he had a disappointing season, but his play isn't disappointing. It's his deployment. We all believe in him when he gets the right deployment. He's sort of been off and on. He's been streaky this playoffs. Had a good start in the round robin, then went quiet. Then a good start against Vancouver, then went quiet. Didn't do much of anything against Chicago. But in his last game, he was reunited. I think it was a reunion with him and Paul Stasny, with the way that Vegas shuffled all their centers. And if that sticks, that's something that could really benefit him. So Alex Tuch is the highest remaining Vegas scorer available, and actually has more points these playoffs than Marchessault and Karlsson, who went before him. So really interesting to see how these guys are going. I mean, it's a playoff pool. It's a bit of a coin flip each pick, but Alex Tuch is certainly making a name for himself again. We'll see if he can stay on our radars through the next round against the Dallas Stars. That concludes round 7. We've got 3 rounds remaining. That is 12 picks left. And we're at Andreas's team. Andreas still needs a defenseman and a team goalie and a forward. So you've got one of each to pick over the last 3 rounds. Andreas, do you know who you want? Or I guess I'll ask you the question of the round. Have you been sniped yet?
I think I have been sniped a couple of times. I think in general, I don't think the first and second round really went the way that I planned. And that kind of put me off a little bit. And now I'm sitting here looking at my team, and I have 2 Islanders here, so I don't know what to think.
But that's probably what you thought. Oh, you're the only one who didn't have the Islanders last round too. Like these 3 other guys all made it through with them. So I feel like they might have been thinking the same thing. Maybe this works out for you.
Yeah. Actually, I haven't had an Islanders the whole playoffs, so I disrespect them throughout. I think at this point, I'm just going to try and get as much Tampa as I can. So there are a couple of these there. I think at this point, when it comes to Tampa, like there are players that you would expect to be better, and they haven't really produced. A couple of, well, at least especially one on D. I'm looking at shots here, and I see that there is one guy that is really shooting the puck on the second power play unit. I think I'll try. I think I will go for Yanni Gord.
Okay. I definitely thought you were leaning D there, but Yanni Gord off the board with 3 points in 5 games against Boston, 7 points on 13 games on the playoffs as a whole. So again, very much with Killorn and Coleman as being like this depth producer who could step up out of nowhere and be their ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals and the Stanley Cup itself. Tampa's chock full of those guys. So that leaves Andreas. Next time I talk to you, you got to pick a defenseman or a set of goalies. Vegard, you have your defenseman, you have your goalies, you've got 3 forwards left.
Well, Brian, I think I just auto-picked Stamkos, and I don't think I will do that.
I see that, and I'm counting on Elon to head into the settings and fix that. There he goes. So Elon's fixing it, and Vegard, you can start telling us what you're thinking now. So yeah, you've got 3 forwards left. Who's so far you've got few Golden Knights and a couple Lightning, and 1 each from the Islanders and the Stars. So you seem to have a nice spread. You know, you've stacked up mostly on a couple teams. You've got the Las Vegas goalies as well, and then you've got a player here and a player there to try and get you points from games where Tampa or Vegas aren't scoring. Where are you thinking of going with your 3rd to last forward pick?
Yeah, that's the hard part because I just got sniped again.
There it is.
So he sniped me with Mark Stone, but then I got Heiskanen, so that's not a problem. But then again with Riley Smith, and now with Yanni Gord, because I was going to stack up on Tampa, and he plays with Coleman, so that was a bad pick for me. But now I have to.
Okay, so you're scrambling a bit.
Yeah, I think I'll go with the guy I think is the best player left on the board here, and that's Anders Lee.
Okay, Anders Lee. I think I agree with you. I see 1, maybe 2 players that I might contend are better, but Anders Lee, we talked about all the guys picking up assists on the Islanders. Anders Lee definitely has a case to be the most talented player remaining in this draft pool, and he's one of the goal getters on Long Island. He actually has he's going for the Cy Young these playoffs, 7 goals, 0 assists. I just love the way this works out. It's like the Islanders, they have this one way of doing things, and that's the way. They're not going to screw around with it. So Anders Lee off the board, someone who has in a NHL regular season 35 goal potential, even 40 goal potential if things break right. So I think it's a really nice pick this late in the draft. If you look at the guys who went before him, Beauvillier, Coleman, Hintz, Tuck, Gord, Lee's name sort of stands out in terms of upside. So Vegard adding another Islander and another pretty good one to his squad, which brings us to Elon, who also has 1 forward, 1 defense, and 1 team goalie remaining. How hard are you thinking about which one to go with first?
I'm thinking harder now. That was a snipe on me. I was thinking might as well complete the set of Barzal, Eberle, and Lee since Lee fell so far. So good job on Vegard. We'll see. We just talked about Lee on the last episode being on a hot run, and then he did nothing this week, which I guess is the reason why he fell. Another player on the Islanders who I had high hopes for in the past round, I actually had on my team, and I was ready to blame him for my loss if I didn't come back yesterday, was Ryan Pulock, who only had like 1 point in the series going into yesterday. He picked up a clutch assist for me to get me here. And so I guess I'll just, maybe the saying is once bitten, twice shy, but not for me, because I'm going to fill out my D and take Ryan Pulock.
Okay, Ryan Pulock. I like that pick a lot. He's just been sitting there. I mean, there aren't a lot of D left to be taken, but Ryan Pulock seems to be still one of the better ones, even though last round was not so impressive, as the Isles scoring mostly came from up front and the D were not very involved. But 2 points and 7. I don't know. I can't really sugarcoat that, actually. So Ryan Pulock had been having a good playoffs up until this last round. Let's see if he can get back on track for you, Elon. And Ricard, now's your time to shine. You've got 2D and a forward left. Are you gonna really wait out defensemen the whole way through? Andres is the only other player, drafter, who still needs to pick a defenseman. So are you gonna try and scoop him with your next pick? Or are you gonna be like, no, you take who you want?
I was prepared for the usual question of gonna pick an Islander, and that would have been a no again. But I actually have to go with a yes this time. It were four D spots total in the total league. That's gonna be we're gonna be filled. It has been for a while, and I've had my eyes on 4 guys. I didn't really mind which of them I was going to end up with, but I've been waiting a bit more and looking at Tampa and looking at PP1 and seeing that there hasn't been a Victor Hedman there the last at least, and I'm going to go with their PP1 defenseman. Hasn't put up too many points this playoff, but I'm hoping that it's more of a kind of. So I'm going Sergachev.
Okay, yeah, Mikhail Sergachev getting that top power play time ahead of Victor Hedman, which we have been also talking about in our patron groups about like, what does this mean long term, and especially what does it mean since Sergachev hasn't been doing a whole lot with that. Let's see, I'm just checking out. He's been on the top power play and had 2 power play points in a game where Frozen Tools shows him as having no power play time. So I guess I'll have to look into that further. But in the game, by and large, really not doing anything on that top power play. So if he does get to stay there regardless, Ricard, you've got a top power play quarterback on a team that is clearly favored amongst our drafters today as one to make the Stanley Cup final. So that could really pay off for you here at pick 32 of 40. So that brings us to Andreas, who needs a defenseman and a team goalie. Andreas, were you hoping for Sergachev to fall to you?
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely sniped at this point. But I was fearing that it would happen, because at some point Ricard needed to start picking D. Like I was looking at the other guy as well. I had him in the last round, and he actually helped me out a little bit. And he is an option at this point. But I am looking back again to the Golden Knights, and there are 2 players there, and frankly, it's hard to separate them. But I think I probably will go with the guy that plays 5-on-5 with Theodore. Let me just check who that is.
Whoever that is, I picked that guy.
It's Martinez, right?
Yeah, it's Martinez. I think I will go with Alec Martinez.
Okay, yeah. Alec Martinez is off the board. Elon, I have to say I'm a little surprised that you didn't grab him when you picked Pulock. Was that just to skip ahead to you? Was that because you had better faith in the Islanders, or like because you've been all about Martinez since these playoffs started?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm full. You've already said I'm full of Dallas and Islanders, so I'm not going to randomly pick a Vegas defenseman. I need Dallas to go forward or I lose. So
okay, so
yeah.
you're just stacking the cards in one way. You have no choice. You've been boxed into a strategy. I say boxed in because it sounded accidental, but you're leaning in is a better way of putting it. Yeah.
If that series goes 7 games, I'd be happy to predict Martinez getting 3 or 4 points. I think he's a solid bet for half point per game, but I need more. I need more from him.
Yeah, I'm glad you snuck your Martinez love in there. I also believe he had 3 points in 7 games last round, so who's to say he can't do at least the same thing again? And as you mentioned, Andreas playing at 5-on-5 with Jay Theodore is a good place to be. Which brings us to Vegard, who is still filling out his forwards. You're like the only one left, or everyone else filling out their other positions. Vegard, you can just focus on the forwards because you started with those 2 defensemen, Hedman and Heiskanen, right off the top. Where are you looking with your second last pick?
I'm looking at Tampa again, and I feel like there's 2 good choices there. And I think I'm going to go with Cirelli.
All right. Yeah. Anthony Cirelli's a really interesting one, right? Because I'm watching Killorn go. I'm watching Gord go. I'm watching Coleman go. But at this time last year, or really any time over the last 2-3 seasons, it's been like, who's going to be the Tampa forward who emerges and like really comes into his own? Is Cirelli. And we haven't seen it these playoffs. Just 5 points in 13 games. So he's been pretty quiet. We'll see if this is his time to shine here in the conference finals. So Vegard, you're going to tell us who your last forward is shortly. But before that, Elon might have something to say about that. Elon, you still have a forward to pick, or you can go team goalies. Just to refresh everyone, the team goalies on the board are Dallas and the Islanders. And the only 2 people in need of team goalies are Elon and Andreas. So Elon, you're essentially have a choice here, whether you want to pick your team goalies before Andre. You want first pick of the remaining 2, or you're good with whoever's left over after Andreas's last pick?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it in the past 3 minutes, and I feel like I think my strategy needs to be that I need Dallas to win, or I'm not going to win, because I have 4 Dallas players. I have 3 Islanders, and I have Kucherov. So theoretically, if Dallas goes forward and Tampa goes forward, I think I could still win this. But if Dallas loses, I think I'm out regardless. So with that said, I might as well just, again, lean in and give me the Dallas goalies. And I'm just...
my draft is suspended, I think.
Okay, so let me fix... Oh, sorry about that. I don't even know how that happened. So Vegard, you could go and put in your Cirelli pick.
Okay.
And then I'll go put in my Dallas team goalies.
All right. So Elon takes the Dallas team goalies, leaving just the Islanders team goalies to be Andreas's final pick. Andreas, you'll tell us how you feel about that in a moment. But yeah, Elon really planning this out very logically and mathematically to see which setup he can actually win with versus which setup might get might get more points between the Dallas and Islanders goalies, which is that's what makes you, Elon. That's what makes you such a successful fantasy player. Yeah. Taking into account all that context.
I feel like a pool like this, I want to come first or last. Like coming second place isn't going to make me feel good. So, I'm not going to win unless Dallas moves forward. So that's what I need to do.
All right. So going all in on Dallas, big move from Elon. We'll see if it pays off.
Actually, can I tell you something funny before we move on?
If it can, yeah, go ahead.
So I actually made a bet. I made some bets at the start of the season on teams to win the cup. And I put money on New Jersey because I was so excited about them signing PK Subban and having Gusev and picking Jack Hughes. And we know how that worked out for me. But the site that I went to make that bet on, like it was like 60 to 1 odds. And I wanted to bet like $25 or whatever, but it only let me bet like 50, like there was like some maximum of how much I could win. Like they weren't going to let me make a bet where I could win like $3,000. It was whatever it was, a $1,500 max win. Anyway, so I had a little bit of money left over and I was like, okay, who should I bet this on? And I ended up betting it on Vegas and I completely forgot about it. So I actually do have like $150 or something coming back to me if Vegas wins. So at this point, I think I'm going to be pretty happy either way, because either Dallas wins and I have a good shot at winning the KKPP and winning a hoodie, or Vegas wins and I could win some real cash money and I could buy myself a hoodie. So either way, I'm getting a hoodie.
Elon teaching us a very valuable lesson that the more bets you place, the more likely you are to win. And that's how you make money.
Exactly.
Okay, so, and Elon, I also wonder that if Dallas does advance, I would not be surprised to see your Islanders hat replaced by a Stars hat for the next season of keeping Karlsson. You're muted.
Potentially.
Okay, great. Ricard, you've got a forward and a defenseman left to pick. What are you looking at here? I guess other people still need forwards, but nobody still needs defensemen. If I can give you a little strategic tip there.
Yeah, you might be surprised. I knew that, so I wasn't looking at D this time. I think it was Vegard when he picked Cirelli talked about seeing he wanted to double down or focus on Tampa, and he saw two forwards there, and I think I'm gonna take who I believe to be the other one. I'm going Tyler Johnson here.
Yeah, Tyler Johnson must have been the other forward Vegard was talking about, who very much like Cirelli has been a guy that we look to in Tampa, and then like, we think he's had enough opportunity to be ahead of Gordon, Coleman, and Killorn by now, but he has not managed to do a whole lot with it. He has one more point so far these playoffs than Anthony Cirelli does, and 1 point less than the trio that I just mentioned, who are doing a little bit better. So Tyler Johnson off the board, which means if anybody wants a Tampa forward, enjoy Mathieu Joseph or Cedric Paquette. We'll see if one of them gets picked, and that's how big everybody here is on Tampa. But that brings us to Andreas, who you have no choice left. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. So I'm just gonna throw it to Andreas. Andreas, you've got one pick left. You don't have a choice in the matter. So you've got the Isles goalies. How do you feel about it?
I'm trying to figure out if mathematically it's possible for like Islanders to have 4 shutouts, but at the same time Tampa moving on, and it doesn't work.
But they could get 3 shutouts and Tampa moves on.
They can. No, I don't know. I think it's I had an opportunity at some point to choose Vegas. I went for Gurianov, and I guess that was a snipe from Vegas' side. And I guess kind of forgot that you had to choose a team. So that probably would have been the better choice. But at this point, I think it's symbolic in a way, like having my last pick of this tournament is Islanders, and having ignored and disrespect them throughout. So maybe this is a good sign, a good kind of conclusion of this.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It's almost poetic, especially if you win. So we'll see if you have that beautiful, not quite storybook, but like exciting and full of narrative ending to your Keeping Karlsson playoff pool. So Andreas' team is done. I'm going to do a quick recap, of the teams after each drafter finishes. So we've got Andreas in order picked Shea Theodore, Mark Stone, Andre Palat, Riley Smith, Dennis Gurianov, Josh Bailey, Anthony Beauvillier, Yanni Gourde, Alec Martinez, and the Islanders team goalies. And it is now Vegard's final pick. Vegard, you've got a forward, and there really aren't a whole lot left to choose from. So I'm really interested to see who you're going to go with this pick.
Well, I'm thinking like Ellen, it's win or go home. So I'm thinking about gambling a little bit here. I could go safe and get a few points, or I can gamble and maybe get a lot of points later. So I'm gonna go with Stamkos, even though there's no news about him.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, you're making me have to stop what I'm doing and go onto Twitter and see if there is.
Don't worry, Brian. I've been doing that all draft long,
Oh, okay.
looking for updates and nothing.
Too.
I don't think that there's any word, but they were saying he might play. So even if he doesn't play next round, if Tampa moves forward, maybe you get him for the finals. And at this point, one round of Stamkos is probably better than any of these forwards.
That's what I'm thinking. So gambling here.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that seems like a very clever pick. I wonder, like, Elon, had you have a forward left?
Yeah.
Would you have gone there, like, or had you forgotten about Stamkos? What's your
like
thing?
I said, I definitely had not forgotten, and he was on my watch list, and I hadn't decided. Like,
okay. Well, decision made.
Yeah, which is probably okay. I'm a wimpy guy. I don't generally pick injured players, and sometimes I regret it later on when they come back and are amazing, like Stamkos I'm sure would be. So tricky pick now. Part of me now I could speak openly because Ricard has to take a defenseman, right? So part of me wants to go Kiviranta on Dallas, but I don't know if he's gonna like stay in the lineup, but he's playing with Hintz, who I have, or in the last game at least. So it would be fun. I could also go to the Islanders again and just keep loading up and take perennial playoff hero JG Pageau, who's not having such a bad playoffs right now.
Yeah, he seems to always pop up at just the right time.
Yeah. All right. I'll take Pageau. I want Kiviranta, but again, I'm wimpy and I don't want to have someone who's going to be healthy scratched. And I know for sure Pageau is going to play.
Okay. So let the record show that Elon wanted Pageau, didn't take, or wanted Kiviranta, didn't take him, but the thought was there. So if Kiviranta has a really great last round or rest of the playoffs, Elon, you can sort of say, I saw that coming. I knew it.
Well, it'll be more like just me beating myself up. If I lose because of this pick, then I'll be like, man, I was hovering over him. I was searching I asked in our Discord right now, and Dave said I think they'd be crazy not to give him another chance. So there was one response when I asked, is Kiviranta going to play? He probably will get a chance, but if they lose a game, then they could just put Cogliano back in, who's been there all season long. So, okay. This is fun. Brian, recap my team.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't do it for Vegard. So
go for it. I'll
go back to Vegard's team. In order, started off with those dual defensemen, Hedman, Heiskanen, Pachuretti, Nelson, Karlsson, Vegas goalies, Coleman, Anders Lee, Anthony Cirelli, and could be the pick of the draft. We said this last round too, though, Steven Stamkos. And then Elon, who just finished up, went Kucherov first, and then drafted exclusively from Dallas and New York the rest of the way. So clearly was thrown for a loop. But Kucherov, then Klingberg, Barzal, Ben, Sagan, Eberle, Hintz, Pulock, the Dallas goalies, and JG Pageau, which brings us to our final 40th pick of this draft, the final draft pick of what's been an amazing Keeping Karlsson playoff pool. And after this, we just get to watch the games get played. Ricard, you've got to go D. I see a couple that you have to choose from. That's as much as I can say for them now.
You only see a couple? I think the fourth picked D was in the later stages of the second round. So right then I picked out 4 guys who I thought were good or okay for me. And when Sergachev fell or when I picked him up, I thought I was going to go with my second D if it was still around. To keep loading up on Tampa players, so I'm going Kevin Shattenkirk.
Okay, that finishes off Ricard's draft with Kevin Shattenkirk, who has more points than Sergachev in the playoffs so far. Has 2 more points than Sergachev, despite a little less opportunity. They were equal in the last round, though, or Sergachev had 1 more point in the last round. So take it for what it's worth. You just and I'll name. So now that Ricard has done his draft, let's share his team. Heavy on Tampa here. Started with Braden Point, then the Tampa goalies: Marchessault, Pavelski, Radulov, Killorn, Tuck, Sergachev, Tyler Johnson, and Shattenkirk. So if Hedman gets injured, Ricard, you're in great shape with those two.
What a terrible thing to say.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Might say that the other defenseman I was looking a little bit at was Nate Schmidt.
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised he didn't go. I mean, like he's not head and shoulders above the rest, but just under half a point per game last round, just over half a point per game for the playoffs as a whole, 6 points or 8 points in 15 games. So Nate Schmidt also left on the board from Vegas. The most notable forward that I think is remaining is Paul Stasny, who, yes, I know, like he's had every opportunity these playoffs and he has not been able to cash in until the game 7 against Vancouver, where he had a goal and an assist, although I think when those points came on an empty net. But he's been around. I've been actually picking him in daily fantasy every game because he's cheap, because he's doing nothing, but I still think the potential is there. But clearly none of our experts.
Can you answer why? Like, why do you think the potential's there? At this point, he's just been bumped by Chandler Stevenson, so now he's in the bottom 6. At some point, you got to give up on him, right?
So I wouldn't say he's been bumped like and out of the top. You could put it that way, or you could say he's playing with Alex Tuck, and we've seen them work together well before. And like, yes, they might get a couple minutes less than the second line, but I still think he can make do with that. He's also had 17 shots in his last 6 games. His shooting percentage is low. I've been watching a few games. He's been like, he got robbed by Thatcher Demko at least a handful of times, especially in game 7. Like he still keeps looking good to the point that like you watch him and it's like, oh my God, this guy cannot buy a goal. And I think he scored an empty netter. I can't remember if he was the one who scored it against Vancouver in game 7. But this is why I still believe in Paul Stasny. Plus, like I said, he's either playing with Tuck or Stone and Pachuretti or Smith and Marchessault. So he's going to end up in a good spot.
Fair enough, Brian. Okay, well, thank you so much to Vegard, Ricard, and Andreas for joining us. This has been so fun.
The Scandinavian contingent. Before we say goodbye, I'll just run down. I was tracking how many players everybody drafted from each team. So Andreas and Vegard sort of had the most balanced approach with 4 each from one team, then 3 from another, 2 from another, and 1 from another. And then Elon, you went strong on Dallas with 5 players there, then 4 from the Islanders and 1 Lightning. But Ricard finishes the draft with the most players from a single team with 6 Tampa Bay Lightning and 2 Vegas Golden Knights. So if the favored teams win, Ricard has 8 players going on to the Stanley Cup final, which surely would be a boon for him. So Vegard would have 7 if Tampa and Vegas advance too. So anyway, a lot can happen. Very interesting to see how teams are constructed in a format like this. And I can't wait to see how it plays out. Thank you all so much for being here. Vegard, Andreas, and Ricard. You guys were awesome.
Thank you. And good luck, everyone.
Yeah,
thanks for having it.
Yeah, good luck, everyone.
Good luck.
Cool. All right, so I'll make an edit point here. Thanks again, guys.
Yeah.
I'll chat with you on Facebook.
I love 3 quarters Norway and Sweden. Half Norway.
Yeah. We'll have to figure out if Ricard wins. What we do, we have co-winners of him and David, or is it like all Ricard, we pretend like David never existed?
Well, his Facebook profile picture is just like the blank outline, so it would be easy to like put a mental image.
Okay, so we'll figure that out after the fact. Maybe we'll like cut a hoodie in half and send you half Ricard and half to David if you win.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
And then
that means I'm giving it to David. That was the King Solomon test, and you failed. Okay. So yeah, nice talking to you guys. I guess Brian and I will now finish off this show.
Yeah. See you guys. Thanks for being here with us.
Perfect. Have a good one.
I guess good night, I should say.
Yeah. Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, sir. So let's just start up Audacity now.
Okay. I'm just going to close my door all the way because Meyer's officially napping. So just a sec.
Is there anyone watching live? Is this live show even working? That's something I do not know. So it says I'm live on YouTube. So if anyone wants to say hi. Actually,
How would you know?
I wouldn't even know. That's a problem. What if people have been chatting the whole time?
I'm in the chat now. The only thing there is hello.
Okay. Well, that's fine. It is like Sunday.
Did you chat that just now or before?
No, I did like a while at the start.
Okay, so we're good.
All right. Let's go. Let's finish this thing off. It's got a few points. The one question, Brian, that I think you might need to think about a little, I don't know if you saw it.
Is Kadri.
Yeah, so that's the one. I'll be curious. The rest of it, we can just we can riff a little bit.
Can you just give me 1 minute to pull up his numbers?
Well, I'm not going to start with that, so you have lots of minutes. I'll start by just doing some ranting.
Well, I'd rather do it without having to, like, being able to listen to you. But go ahead.
Okay, bring up some numbers. Bring up the numbers.
Go ahead. No, I'm ready. I did it.
Okay, awesome.
They're up.
Good job.
You love Kadri.
I mean, what's not
Your
to
new
love?
favorite player.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I picked him in the last round, and he
For
did
the
really
record,
well.
I was really big on him at the start of the playoffs.
Yeah,
all season long, I owned him.
So
You told me
why
to
did you
drop
flip?
him.
So why did you? What? No.
I think there were probably some points where you told me to drop him.
Don't
I had,
spread
like-
lies, Brian. You
I had,
very rude.
No,
of you.
I
Why
had
would I say to drop the top power play and like second line center that's like on a 60-point pace?
Well, the answer will be found in his game logs. He started the season pointless in 3, and then he had a really rough stretch from December to January. He had 7 points in 17 games.
I'm gonna need you to find me the proof for that. I don't like when you just say these things and then you don't bring back proofs. I think you did this really dumb thing, and now I have no way to defend myself because it's just like something you think.
Okay.
Maybe you'll find it and share it later, and then I'll be embarrassed. Okay.
Drop Kadri.
Are you finding it now? Then I'm gonna find the audio of you saying how you think it's a really smart trade for the Leafs to trade Kadri for Barry.
Well, you did say you would drop Makayev before Kadri.
Yeah,
That
sounds like something I would say.
Yeah. Okay. No, you seem to have been with Kadri.
Okay, thank you. See, this is how these rumors get spread, and you could just say things and you shape
These
history.
rumors.
You shape history with facts.
Oh
This is
my
like
God.
what's happening in the world right now. People just
Nobody's
say things.
watching this, Elon.
People just say random things, and then they become truths that people believe. And like, some heads of state just say things
like that. This is just like that.
Now people are gonna be like, oh, why am I? This Elon guy's an idiot. He said to drop Kadri. Come on. All right, let's go. Okay, that was so much fun. Brian, good job hosting the draft. I guess you won't be hosting another draft for a while now until our Keeping Karlsson Tier 1 auction draft in 5 months or so. And what have you learned from all of your draft hosting? Did you think you did a good job there?
Are you asking me about my personal performance or what I saw happen in the draft?
Your personal performance.
I always think I talk a little too much. So hopefully our listeners aren't too sick of my voice, which means that, Elon, I think now would be a great time for you to go off on a rant or something.
Okay. I don't know why I asked you that. I couldn't think of a question off the top of my head. I didn't want to ask
really
what you
weird
thought
question.
of it. Well, it's hard to even judge who won the draft, right? Because it all depends on how these series are going to turn out. Ricard has these 6 Tampa players, like you said, but I have Kucherov, but he has points. But you know what I mean? But he has a lot of Tampa players who might not get points. Hard to say. It'll be fun to follow. This has been a blast. But okay, we do have other content to get to.
Yeah, I think my one qualm, I think the weirdest quirk of the draft was you picking Kucherov first, but then no other Tampa players. So your first pick investment was not at all backed up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But what was I supposed to do? I picked Kucherov, and then sort of things shifted that happened that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna now take, I don't know, Anthony Cirelli, really high up.
Yeah, it just makes things difficult because you're relying on your number 1 pick to not last very long. I guess the good news is that no one else will have him. So you've taken those points away from a competitor, and hopefully they'll help you get somewhere. But like you said, it's all about adjusting on the fly, and that was not your plan, but you were in a situation, and good for you for making a call and sticking with it instead of just being all over the place. Like you clearly made your choice to go with Dallas and Islanders players the rest of the way. And I think it was good for you to take a stand, like to really take a position as quickly as you did, adjusting on the fly.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Don't forget also, I mean, if the Islanders and Tampa go 7 games and Kucherov gets me like 10 points, it's not like a wasted pick. It'll still probably be one of the higher scoring picks. I just need that series to go long. So, okay, Brian, with that, I'm going to make an edit point here. Let's start our Audacity recording just to be extra safe. So, ready for that?
Will be. Yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, record.
Recording.
Recording. I don't know how I'm gonna put this show together in the edit.
Regarding.
We'll figure that out as we go. So okay, yeah, Brian. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, I guess for the rest of the show now, there's just like a few tidbits I wanted to bring up that have happened over the last week that I think we need to discuss. Number one piece of news, it's probably the trade. But before that, let's quickly talk about these conference finals. I guess we've already brought it up. I think I already said this on the show. I just wanted to bring up the fact that Brett in our Discord mentioned that there are like teams. It's a really fun conference finals because you have 2 teams who everyone was expecting, and then 2 teams that like weren't necessarily so great in the regular season, but now made a surge in the playoffs and showed to be completely different teams in the Islanders and Dallas. And I do want to point out that the Islanders and Dallas actually had stretches this season where they were like among the top teams in the league. So I brought it up before how the Islanders were like amazing, like winning 2/3 of their games after 55 games, and they just lost everything at the end. And Arthur Staple brought up how like it was a lot of like guys that we didn't notice on the podcast because we only talk about fantasy relevant players, but you know, your Casey Cizikises, Adam Pelech, Cal Clutterbuck, like these kinds of players were injured, and I think that really hurt the Islanders in the game that they try to play of having a balanced, you know, forward lineup. So that is a reason why maybe it shouldn't be as much of a surprise that they've gone far, because they did look like this team. And then also Dallas, they had a really weird year. Like they went 1-7-1 to start the year. They were 0-4-2 at the end of the year. So those stretches really brought down their record. But sandwiched in between that was a team that went 36-13-5. So they also had a big chunk of the season where they were among the best in the league and they were like barely losing. So yeah, just want to throw it out there. It's like, I think that these matchups could be very close. And these Dallas and Islanders teams, you may think they're not as good because of their final season records, but there were times when they were just doing just as well as Vegas and Tampa.
Yeah, for what it's worth, in an 82-game season, both were pacing for about 97, 98 points on the season, which is really impressive. Like that's a good place for a team to be ending up. A little less meaningful with the loser points being handed out. But in any case, they were in the top 10 teams most of the year in the NHL standings, and you can't really take anything away from them. They might have been streaky. You mentioned Dallas had trouble at the beginning and at the end. And I think that start for Dallas really stuck with a lot of people, and everyone gave up on them and then didn't see anyone scoring there. So we're just like, oh, yeah, like whatever, Dallas exists, I guess. But what they did was they were just shutting down teams the whole season, winning on their goaltending, which is will continue to be the recipe to get through the season. Same with the Islanders. They're a team that doesn't get a lot of headlines because they don't score a lot of goals. They're very much a defense first team. They're also, as we mentioned during the draft, kind of anonymous in terms of who these guys are and what role they play on the team. So they're just 2 teams that quietly go about their business, don't play a flashy style, don't have a superstar who's really, grabbing headlines and attention on highlight reel. So like you barely even see their jerseys if you're watching sports highlights. So I think that's why Dallas and the Islanders kind of crept under a lot of people's radars, and people forgot about these huge runs that they went on of wild success that probably do show what their true talent level is, rather than whatever happened because of some rough variants or a system that was, still in the workings, or injuries that were affecting them.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of injuries, on Dallas, Ben Bishop was injured for a while, so he didn't play much in this playoffs. It's been Anton Khudobin leading the way for Dallas. And now it's an interesting situation because Bishop came in and played that Game 6 game where Colorado like totally destroyed him. He let in 4 goals on 19 shots in 13 minutes before he got pulled. And so now, then Khudobin played in Game 7 and got the win. And also on the Islanders, actually, it was Thomas Greiss who got the shutout yesterday in Game 7. over the Flyers. The Flyers that took less than 20 shots, but I feel like it's interesting. We don't even know who these teams' starting goalies will be. I feel like they might have goalie changes also at the playoffs. So I guess it makes sense for us that we did team goalies in our KKPP draft, because I wouldn't know who to take between Bishop and Hudobin and then Greiss and Varlamov.
Yeah, the beauty of team goalies, especially in the playoffs where you can't guess one way or the other. I don't imagine both these goalies will still be in Dallas next year. I also still wonder if any team is really ready to make Hudobin their starter. There have been a couple teams that have tried and it didn't quite pan out. Maybe Hudobin's ready for that. I mean, he looks ready for it. I'd love to see him get another chance. So it's been an interesting way to beat teams with your quote unquote backup or 1B goalie, but Hudobin's showing that he's up there with any of the starters remaining in the playoffs.
Though I guess on the other side, you look at the game log against Colorado, his numbers aren't great. It's just Dallas all of a sudden scored a ton of goals themselves. I'm looking at 909 save percentage, 870, 909, 892, 839. So actually these last few games, Hudobin hasn't been great. So yeah, you're already looking ahead and talking about what's going to happen in unrestricted free agency once the season's over. I'm even just curious to see who Dallas is going to play in game 1 versus Vegas. I feel like it would still be up in the air for me.
Well, keep in mind, Ben Bishop, his last 3 games in the playoffs have gone not so well either. He played 1 game against Colorado, had the 789 save percentage in under 14 minutes of work, gave up 4 goals, and his round robin appearances against Vegas and his, I guess, in the actual series against Calgary, both of those were bad, 875 and 846. So Ben Bishop not having himself a great playoffs, which is very funny that we're seeing the Dallas goalies. Like I just said how amazing they are, because I still think they are. But when they're struggling, we didn't know that Dallas would be able to pick up the slack and score enough goals to make it work, but they have. So more power to them. Last I heard, by the way, which is today's Sunday afternoon, I saw Saturday Bishop was still listed as unfit to play. So it might not even be a choice for Dallas. Although I also read that Rick Bowness said there was a conversation about starting Jake Edinger at one point. So I still wonder if both goalies continue to struggle, if there's even the smallest outside chance that we see like maybe a period of Edinger just to see how it goes.
That's wild. Yeah, the thing with Dallas is like, did the goalies not play well, or is just Colorado such an amazing offensive team that like no goalie would have been able to do much better? Which just goes to say how impressive it is that this Dallas team, who we thought, oh, this is just a defensive team, they can't even score. It makes me kind of think maybe they could, maybe all season they had this in them. They chose to play this defensive way because that's how they were able to win a lot of games. But then in the series against Colorado, they had to flip things around. So yeah, it's pretty wild. And also like a lot of things are changing this playoffs. Like we looked at Joe Pavelski as his signing being kind of a bust and like, oh wow, Dallas must be really regretting this. And I remember in our interview with Sean Shapiro, he said, well, let's see what happens in the playoffs, because they got, they're going to make the playoffs. They didn't get Pavelski for the regular season. They got him for the playoffs, and now he is coming through. So yeah, a lot of storylines kind of changing, or the narratives are changing as we go through these playoffs.
It's been a lot of fun to watch. It makes your head spin a little bit about what the implications are going to be for fantasy next season, whenever that is. But we also still have an entire off season to work through and see what pieces move. So there are a lot of things, and on Keeping Karlsson, we're going to collect all those pieces. We're going to neatly organize them and try to make sense as best we can using whatever data we have. In the meantime, I'm kind of enjoying just watching.
For sure. Though, even though there's playoffs going on, like I ranted about last week, teams are still able to make trades. Once you're eliminated, they don't just watch, they make deals. And there was a big deal this week with the Habs and St. Louis. The Blues, I guess you could call it salary dump. They dump Jake Allen on the Habs and his $4.35 million for next year. Montreal also gets a 7th round pick. And in exchange, St. Louis gets a 3rd round pick and a 7th round pick. But obviously the big win for the Blues is that they take Allen off the books. And most people are assuming that this is because they want to try to re-sign their captain, Alex Pietrangelo. And so they need to clear as much space as they can. So I think it makes perfect sense why the Blues make this deal. There's been a lot of debate about whether this was a smart or dumb move by the Habs. So maybe let's table the Habs talk for a sec. And quickly on St. Louis, this leaves Jordan Binnington as not having a big challenger for next year. We were already debating, I think on last week's show or a couple of weeks ago, wow, next year, who do you draft in fantasy, Binnington or Allen? All of a sudden now, I guess they're putting their faith in Binnington, even though he had this 851 save percentage in the playoffs, 912 save percentage on the regular season. So he wasn't amazing. But now I guess he's a starter. I guess, though that said, I guess there's unrestricted free agency. Maybe they're going to sign someone. maybe if they can't get Pietrangelo, all of a sudden now they have all this money saved and they could go for like a Hudobin or someone. Or maybe we see Ville Husso finally come up and be the backup, and it would make sense. He's been in the AHL for the past 3 seasons. He's been kind of all over the place. I'm looking in terms of his numbers: 922 save percentage, 871 save percentage, and 909 save percentage in each of his last 3 seasons in the AHL for San Antonio. So at this point, with what we know now, I guess Binnington's fantasy, dynasty league stock has risen a little bit, but I still feel like whoever is the backup is probably going to challenge him, because Binnington is starting to give vibes of maybe a little bit of a flash in the pan, but it's probably too early to say that.
I feel like Binnington stock has not gone up. It's like fluttered. It's flittered. It's gone up, it's gone down. Like, it's just kind of all over the place, because on one hand with Jake Allen gone, it's like, oh, great, no competition. But then you remember, oh, Ville Husso, he was the one who was supposed to be in Binnington's position when Binnington took it. When the St. Louis goalies weren't getting it done, Husso was supposed to be the one who got the next shot. Binnington came out of nowhere, took that shot, ran with it. And now we wonder if he can keep running or if he's just out of gas. And this was never totally meant to be for Binnington, having a long and illustrious NHL career as a starter. So I'm very interested to see this goalie competition kind of start anew. It kind of reminds me of like the Crawford Niemi days, to call back to early Chicago at the start of this decade, or the last decade, I guess. You've got 2 capable young goalies who both have promise, but they're going to be going toe-to-toe to see who gets the job. I guess Binnington has the advantage as the incumbent, but I'm still as interested as I've ever been to see what Husso can bring to the table. So always disappointed that we never really got to see him.
Yeah, I think if you're in a long-term dynasty league and Husso is available, I don't even know if they do free agents. I guess it depends on your league, but he's someone I would be watching right now, because he's going to get a shot next year. And if Binnington struggles, next thing you know, maybe you get a goalie playing a significant number of games on a strong St. Louis team. But again, we'll see what happens in unrestricted free agency. What do we know the date for that yet? Who knows? Okay, we'll talk about it when it happens.
I barely know what day it is today. Don't ask me what the date for anything else is.
Fair. Okay, then on the Habs side, okay, so I guess let's have this discussion first before we get into the fantasy implications. I guess the fantasy implications actually are pretty simple, right? Carey Price is the starter. Jake Allen's not going to challenge Carey Price to like take over as the starter. Obviously, the Habs here want to get themselves that backup goalie that they've been trying to get for so long. And so the hope is that Allen maybe plays 30-40% of the games. Price is rested. But I guess the big fantasy impact question to you would be like, does Carey Price go up or down in value? Because maybe we're hoping that he'll have better rate stats now that he gets to rest a little bit and not play on a pace for like 67 games like he was this past season. But also, if you're in a league that counts shots on goal, or I should say saves or wins, I guess, if he plays fewer games, like, I don't know. It's tough to say. I would say probably if I was to pick one right now, I'd say I'm pretty much the same on Carey Price, like fewer games, but hopefully he plays better and it all evens out.
First off, when I first saw this trade, it was like, everyone has told Marc Bergevin or like the Habs, like, you can't win with $10.5 million invested in goaltending. And Bergevin, was like, oh, okay, I'll spend $15 million in goaltending. That'll fix the problem. Which it's insane to think of how much the Habs are spending at this position. I don't think it's a good idea. I also don't want to get ahead of ourselves in thinking what this means for Carey Price, because I wonder where else Jake Allen could end up. We've seen this happen before, right? Like a player's rights get traded. I mean, Allen still has a one more year under contract, so it's not quite the same thing. But we've seen, especially with some veterans, they bounce around from team to team once or twice in the offseason until they finally land, because teams are trying to, make deals and make things work and have leverage and assets and whatever. So I'm not at all set on Jake Allen,
Brian, I gotta ask,
Montreal next year.
Where are you getting this from? I've been reading and seeing lots. Is this just your hunch? Like, I've been reading lots of analysis. This is, of like, course,
it happened. You're gonna analyze it. Well, either my take is the useless one, or all the analysis of Jake Allen being in Montreal is the useless one. I will say,
all the beat writers, all the hockey analysts, like Marc Bergevin himself, talking about how they're happy to have Jake Allen. This is not going to happen. Don't even throw this out there. You should have thrown this out there as like the very end of the discussion.
Do you remember when there was discussion about what Mike Hoffman would do for the San Jose Sharks?
It's not the same thing. It happened in a day. Also, didn't Hoffman get traded twice? Come on, Brian.
I think so.
Stop throwing out these conspiracy theories to the world here. Like, Jake Allen is the backup on Montreal next year.
I will say, so if Jake Allen is the backup in Montreal next year, it seems likely, Elon. Then
they traded for him, and I think it's likely.
They traded for they got some draft picks out of the deal.
All right, let's just move on.
And maybe they can flip him somewhere else and still keep collecting other assets, because you would think there are other teams in the league who might be more interested in Jake Allen than Montreal.
But I thought we were going to have a serious discussion here, not you throw out weird theories anytime a trade gets made. Well, who knows if they're actually going to keep that player? This is like never happens, and don't bring up, except for Mike Hoffman being traded twice in the same day.
It's not the only one. I'm trying to think of who. I'll see if I can pull.
That's someone that had 1 year left on his contract and they traded for him. Sure.
Okay. If Jake Allen stays in Montreal, you already said what there is to say, so I have to come up with something.
No, I actually have a lot to say. I just want to ask first about the fantasy.
Carey Price will play less, but he will play better. So exactly what you said. You might get fewer saves, but hopefully you'll get better rate stats, and maybe you'll get better from the rest of Montreal too. Like, they'll be a better team as a whole. That's beyond the fantasy take, though. Montreal has been needing desperately, the same way that Edmonton needed a backup goalie for a while, and Toronto needed a backup goalie for a while, and Tampa too. All these teams that are just running their workhorse goalies out there. I don't think it's a way to win a cup. So Montreal is taking a step to remedy that, paying kind of a heavy price to do it. And I'm not sure they're that close, but it'll help Carey Price's fantasy managers next season for sure.
Okay. Yeah, except unless you really care about his saves, because the games played will go down, which is the whole point. Yeah, so I've been seeing a lot of debate about this, right? The cons obviously are like, oh, you're spending now $15 million on goalies. And Ben from Short Shifts argued that the Habs couldn't even get past the first round of the playoffs this year, even with Price playing amazing. So obviously, getting Price up to a good level isn't going to help. It's more they need to improve other places on the team. So they should have used this cap space more smartly. Hopefully, Ben, I'm like saying your point to the way that you meant it to be. Hopefully, Ben, I'm expressing your opinion correctly as you meant it to be me. Oh my God, I don't even want to talk. Hopefully, I'm presenting your argument in the correct way. I think, though, I like the trade, and I'm actually very surprised at all the people that are really down on it. Like, I've thought this through a lot. Like, first of all, we've talked about forever how the Habs need a backup, right? They Arpon Basu, who we talked about who we talked to in our Beat Writers series, he tweeted saying that Carey Price was like, you have a luxury car and you spent too much on the car, so then you don't spend any money on maintenance, and so now the car like doesn't perform as well. And that's what the Habs were doing by spending all this money on Carey Price and then not giving them a backup. So then they work him into the ground and he's not able to play like elite Carey Price because he's always like tired partway through the season, getting injured all the time and all these issues. And I really like this analogy. I remember I asked Arpon when we talked to him, I was like, I was looking at it more like the Habs aren't as good of a team as like the Bruins. And I was saying like, oh, if Carey Price was on Boston, do you think that he'd be putting up Tuukka Rask numbers? And Arpon very quickly was like, well, yeah, I get what you're saying in terms of like Boston's better defensively, but he was more like, the reason why he thinks Rask is able to put up such better numbers is he has Halak there and he doesn't have to play as many games. So now, hopefully, obviously this is all depending on Jake Allen actually being as good as he's been as a backup like this past season, which, who knows, right? But he was a .927 goalie this year in 24 games, and he had a strong playoffs as well. He was bad before when he was a starter, but maybe he can be a solid enough backup, like better than the Antti Niemis and Keith Kincaid recently. Anyways, it was basically like guaranteed loss night. Whenever Carey Price didn't play this year, you knew that there was a good chance they were going to get blown up because their backups were terrible. So now hopefully the Habs can just like roll out the backup, rest Price whenever they feel like it, and not feel like they're giving away a game. And yeah, to argue Ben's point, I have actually a few arguments, Brian. So just like interrupt me when you're ready for me to stop.
No, but keep going.
So Ben said like, oh, the Habs, like couldn't get past the first round of the playoffs. So obviously like they have bigger issues than goaltending. I guess my argument would be like, to me, the Habs are like, no one thinks they're a cup contender next year, right? Like, I feel like that would be a miracle if they could somehow pull that off. I think, they've got the Suzuki and they've got Kotkaniemi and their pick from the last draft, who I'm blanking on his name, but a shorter guy that people are really excited about in a couple years. So I think the Habs are building for the future. But for next year, I feel like this year they weren't even a playoff team. You know, they got lucky because of the pandemic and then this extra play-in round, and then they beat Pittsburgh, which was very unexpected. But, you know, next year, I feel like if they could just make the playoffs, that's really fun. And I think that they won't make I don't think they're going to be a playoff team if they don't have a good backup goalie. So I feel like we're maybe looking at different benchmarks for what we're hoping for this team. Like, I would just love, as a kind of new Habs fan, like I'm enjoying watching this team lately. I have some friends who are Habs fans. Like, I don't want to watch a team that's tanking. I want to watch a team that's going to go to the playoffs, maybe give some of these young players some playoff experience, and then they figure things out after that. So, and also the key thing here, so the other big point I want to make is that this is a 1 year left on Jake Allen's contract. That's like the whole point, because next year the Habs don't have any real players they need to worry about re-signing. They have Max Domi, who's a restricted free agent. Seems like he might be out the door anyways. So yeah, you could say maybe they could have signed some players in unrestricted free agency, but like, when's the last time the Habs were able to convince a good player to come to their team in unrestricted free agency? Like, they got Carl Alsner on D a while back. You know, they could try to get a guy like Thomas Greiss or Anton Hudobin, and sure, like those guys will probably sign on another team for less than $4 million, and then we'll be like, oh, the Habs should have done that. But it's like, there's a lot of teams looking for these backup goalies, so there's no guarantee. And what if they decide not to trade for Jake Allen? Then they don't get these goalies. Maybe St. Louis dumps Allen somewhere else because they're just trying to get rid of him so that they can, you know, re-sign Pietrangelo. And next thing you know, the Habs are stuck once again having to sign like I don't know, Jimmy Howard or Mike Smith or one of these old goalies who's willing to sign a 1 year deal. Because another thing is, they don't only just need to sign a goalie, they need to sign a goalie who's willing to take a 1 year deal, because after next season, the whole top line is unrestricted free agent. They could all be gone potentially. So the Habs are gonna have to figure something out. Gallagher, Tatar, Deneau, also Petrie is gonna be unrestricted free agent. So they need to not have players like a Jake Allen type or a backup goalie signed beyond next season. So I think this was the best way that they can get a goalie for 1 year. That's hopefully a good backup that won't be on the books the following year. So to me, it makes perfect sense. Like, I know you could just say, yeah, you shouldn't be spending 15 million on your goalies, but my response is they've already, you know, it's a sunk cost. They already have that money dedicated to Price. So I'm thinking, like, what can they do to best like increase their chances of making the playoffs next year? And I think it's getting a solid backup goalie, and I think they've done that.
Yeah, so the other route they could have taken was to try somebody less proven or more of a journeyman, like someone with like a Curtis McElhinney type profile to use as their backup, who would definitely come cheaper. But I hear what you're saying. $4.5 million for Jake Allen isn't cheap, but there's not a whole ton of room between that and what you would need to pay for someone who you're hoping is going to be reliable. Meanwhile, Jake Allen is still someone you're hoping to be reliable, though we've made the point before that he is someone who seems to do better when he is in a backup or timeshare role. So I think this could be good for both goalies. I still think it is pricey. Elon, I am with you that there's nothing you can do about spending on Jake Allen to improve your carry price. I get it. I just don't know how an NHL team can, like, I guess your point is that the Habs have everyone coming back except Max Domi at forward. So like they're kind of set. Maybe they don't need to make any changes up front. They just need to improve their goaltending. But to me, I don't know. It just feels like they're more than this move away from really taking their ability to contend up a notch. And I just wonder if there was another way to distribute that cash to be able to do it. But I am all up for seeing what happens if Jake Allen is indeed a member of the Montreal Canadiens at the start of next season.
But so do you think there was actually something that Bergevin could do to make them like a cup contender next season? Like, do you actually think that was something like, oh, if they had a smarter GM, they'd be contending for the cup next season? That's crazy to me.
Well, no, but then like, so the question is, what are you doing in the meantime? Like, why?
They make the playoffs next year while their young players develop into stars.
Development. Yeah. So I suppose that's one way.
Unless you want them to tank. You want them to just tank next year?
I'll give you another number, Elon, to think about. The number is 33. That's how old Carey Price is right now. He'll be heading into his age 33 season next season. So, you're saying, well, this is good, get the team some experience, but by the time Jake Allen's contract is over and they can reinvest that $4.5 million, Carey Price will be heading into his age 34 season. He's not young.
Okay, but again, like, what can they do about it? Like, I don't think they're going to win the cup next year regardless. So they have Carey Price under contract. So what are you going to do?
Well, maybe this keeps them from making some longer term commitments. Like maybe this is money they could use. Anyway, I'm sure Marc Bergevin has thought this out very well and carefully. He's done all right as a GM, right? This whole Subban Weber thing really made him look good in the end, and a lot of us look dumb. So good for him. I have some faith in what he's doing more than I did a couple years ago. So we'll see if this pans out. I don't know what the alternatives were for doing with his $4.5 million of cap space. If it's to improve Carey Price and to maybe get your team to the second round of the playoffs next year, it's worth it.
Yeah, even first round, I think, is probably a win because they weren't even a playoff team.
They didn't even qualify. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that. Hopefully people enjoyed that debate. I still can't believe we actually wasted time talking about if he's going to actually be there. But anyway, I'll move on. A couple other players I just wanted to mention before we close out the show from the last round. We're going to close the door on the Avalanche and the Vancouver Canucks. And so let's talk about them really quickly. Like the Avalanche, like their players did so well offensively, right? They just couldn't keep pucks away. And obviously it didn't help that, first of all, Grubauer got injured early on, and then Francouz was injured. So they had Hutchinson as their goalie at the end. And obviously you don't want to be depending on Michael Hutchinson to take you through to the conference finals. But I want to give a shout out, right? McKinnon, Rantanen, Burakovsky, Makar, and Kadri with 12, 11, 9, 8, and 7 points respectively in those 7 games. So lots of players helped their fantasy owners for sure. Obviously McKinnon and Rantanen, we already know how great they are. Amazing to see what Burakovsky was able to do. And he got on the top line when Landeskog got injured at the end of the series. And he definitely showed that I think he's an unrestricted free agent this summer. Correct me if I'm wrong, or restricted free agent. So he's earning himself lots of money. And then we've got Kadri, who I think is really fun to talk about just because this is a guy who has had an amazing playoffs. He had 18 points in 15 games now, overall over a point per game. He had a 58-point pace in the regular season. So I'm curious to know what you think at this point. Which version of Nazem Kadri do you expect to show up on our fantasy teams next year? Like, is he a 60-point guy, or is there this upside for more that we've seen in this playoffs?
You know, I'm looking at the difference between his regular season and his playoff numbers, and I can't see a massive difference. In fact, at 5-on-5, Nazem Kadri had a higher shooting percentage in the regular season. So like, if you're just showing me this, I might think that he's definitely a 60-point guy if he's lucky. Or I'm just gonna start my answer over.
Okay, maybe you could start also by just saying Burakovsky's an RFA, just to close the book on that.
Oh yeah, I did look that up. Okay, well, just to get started, Burakovsky is in fact a restricted free agent. He's 25 years old, so we'll see if he's able to get something with term and money based on his playoff performance. I'm sure it interested some teams. He did it at a very good time. And then for Kadri, yeah, I mean, he had a really solid regular season and an even better playoffs. And looking at the differences in his numbers between them, there aren't huge ones. He was a better player in the playoffs, and not in an unsustainable way either. His IBP jumped a bit, but maybe that was offset by a drop in shooting percentage, and you can wash out the variance that happened. This is all at 5-on-5. So if you're asking me if he's a 60 or 80-point player, my answer is probably still somewhere in between. I think a lot of it depends who's playing on his wings, right? He didn't have great line mates last season. I think Colorado might have been a little awoken again to the fact that maybe they need some better secondary scoring depth, which they did sort of try and address this offseason by acquiring guys like Donskoy and Burakovsky and adding Nichushkin to the mix too. But even just Burakovsky and Donskoy weren't necessarily a great fit. And there were times where Kadri was playing with guys like JT Compher and Tyson Jost. And that was when he was fairly quiet on the scoreboard. He was the best when playing with Burakovsky and Donskoy.
This makes perfect sense then, Brian. You solved it because there were all those injuries this year when Rantanen and Landeskog were injured. Then that's when Donskoy and Burakovsky got to line one. And so if next year, if everyone's healthy, maybe this is a sign that Kadri should be better than a 60-point player. Yeah.
So going back to what I was saying about his numbers not looking terribly different between the regular season and the playoffs, except who he got to play with. And like you brought the context for, when his line mates got worse when Colorado had some injury issues with Rantanen and Landeskog. So long as Colorado can retain some half decent line mates for Kadri, some top 6 line mates instead of bottom six line mates, as you know, guys like Jost and Comfer were for him this season, Kadri could very well continue. Like, I would set his floor at 70, especially if he keeps getting this top power play deployment. Or I shouldn't say floor. His floor is probably 60, but like I could reasonably expect 70 points or more from Kadri next year, so long as he has some good pieces playing with him. And we'll see if Colorado makes room to re-sign Burakovsky. He wasn't necessarily making bank this season. What was he making? Oh yeah, $3.25 million. So it's probably going to cost Colorado a little more to retain him than that. So we'll see what they can work out. Also, Nemesnikov, an unrestricted free agent, basically the only top six forward under contract for next season, and this might even be arguable aside from Kadri, is Joonas Donskoi at just under $4 million. So you kind of need someone like Burakovsky as a better piece than Donskoi to help Kadri out at 5-on-5.
Why did you say say that again? The only forward under contract next season?
The only top six forward under contract next season, aside from the top line and aside from Nazem Kadri, is Joonas Donskoi and JT Comfort, but I wouldn't call him a top six forward.
Okay, so we're basically saying they need to re-sign Burakovsky and they need to not have injuries, and then we like Kadri as a 70-point guy.
Yeah.
And Burakovsky, like you said, he's a restricted free agent, which means that Colorado will probably re-sign him or he'll go to arbitration or whatever. Like, I don't think they're going to let him go at this point. It's just a matter of if they lock him up long-term or just for a 1-year bridge deal until he becomes an unrestricted free agent. So I think things are looking good, and that was a really great playoffs for Kadri, and I'm really happy for him. So then I want to go to Vancouver now. The big news that we're not going to cover every single team that lost. It's already been a pretty long show, but we got to talk about Thatcher Demko's amazing 3-game run after Jacob Markstrom got hurt. Demko single-handedly won a couple games for the Canucks to force Game 7, stopping like 43 of 44 in Game 5, all 48 shots against for a shutout in Game 6. And this was with the Canucks barely shooting. Like Vegas shut them down. It must have been so frustrating for them to be able to like really outplay this team, but not be able to win games just because of how great Thatcher Demko was doing. And yeah, then Game 7, by the way, another great game. He stopped 33 of 34, but the Canucks couldn't score on any of their meager 14 shots on goal they took against Robin Lehner. Ryan Krieg in our #HockeyCards Discord channel yesterday said he shared a tidbit that a week ago Demko's Young Guns hockey cards were selling at $15, and yesterday about 50 of them sold for $50. So obviously the hockey card collectors think Demko's stock has shot up. And Brian, I think we need to start bringing this into our fantasy analysis, because obviously this likely means that his fantasy value is shot up, and why wouldn't it, right? Especially because now it's so interesting. Markstrom's an unrestricted free agent. All of a sudden now, maybe do the Canucks have more leverage, or are they more willing to let Markstrom go now that Demko's, it's only 3 games, but he's really showed that it would be kind of weird to pay big money for another goalie when you might have like a superstar goalie that you don't want to bury in your lineup.
So the Canucks already knew that they might have a superstar goalie that they didn't want to bury in their lineup. They just weren't sure, I think, if he was someone that could be relied upon, especially because if they let Markstrom go, then they've got Mikey DiPietro coming up, who, might be okay as an NHL backup or might not be ready yet either. So you've got Thatcher Demko, who was a .905 this season. This was his first season with real game time in 27 games played in the regular season. And then, of course, .985 in the playoffs. That's insane. That's over 4 appearances and 3 starts. Like, this guy played 186 minutes, saw 130 shots, and let in 2 goals against one of the league's most offensive teams. And you could see, like, the Canucks were down for the count. Watching Game 7 especially, like, they barely touched the puck in the first period. It was like, forget about how many shots the Canucks got themselves. Just the barrage coming from Vegas of high quality chances that Thatcher Demko was up against stopping, and he was up to the task. Now, does this mean that he's a legit starter in the NHL? No, it doesn't mean that. It means like he caught fire and there's promise and potential. And we're very excited because that goes along with what we already know about Thatcher Demko, which is that he's a blue chip goaltending prospect. But I don't know that I'm ready to buy in yet. I think if anything, this might hurt Jacob Markstrom. Like, if he does want to stay in Vancouver, they might not want to offer him quite as much because they don't think they need to make that big a bet away from Demko, that they could bet a little more on Demko being ready to carry the load. So it's going to be interesting because I think Jacob Markstrom is a starter, is a number 1 goalie in the NHL. and it would be very strange to have him in like a 1A, 1B situation with Demko. I think that would be Vancouver's best case scenario, but I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. So I don't know, Elon. I have no idea what this means for Vancouver's Crease future. I do know that it definitely blurs things a lot, because going into the postseason, it was straight up, well, Jacob Markstrom has to be the guy. Like they're going to re-sign him because they have to. And now that's just not as clear the case as it was before. You never want to make a judgment call based on a couple games, especially postseason games, but it's hard to watch what happened in those games and not be affected by it.
Yeah, it's almost like the optics of it. Like at this point, if you're a Canucks fan, don't you just want to see Demko get a lot of games to start next season? Because like you just saw him do so well. And like, if, you know, I feel like, yeah, before we thought maybe they could try to bring Markstrom back for a year or two to let Demko play as a backup for a while. Now it's like Markstrom's like one of the premier unrestricted free agents out there for goalies. So I wonder if now the Canucks are like, well, maybe we don't need to bring in Markstrom. We need to bring someone. Maybe we don't want DiPietro to be the backup, but maybe instead of spending $5 million on Markstrom, we can go for like a Greiss, you know, a little bit cheaper, like someone who like we expect to be more of a tandem as opposed to someone who's expecting to be a starter.
Yeah, exactly. Like a team that is more, they might not be as desperate as another team is for goaltending, who is willing to meet Jacob Markstrom's demands, which isn't, like I said, unfortunate for Markstrom if he wanted to stay in Vancouver. And let's not overlook, by the way, that Markstrom had a fantastic postseason, .924 save percentage, and he was like an incredibly good goalie in almost all of his starts. Only 2 real duds, and one of them Vancouver managed to win anyway. Another, unfortunately, was against Vegas, so you might look back at that game, but that was sandwiched between 944 and 950 performances from Markstrom. So like there's no question that he's like, I'm not questioning his ability at all just because Demko got in, right? So we'll see what happens, and we'll see where the dust settles, and we'll take it from there. But for now, it does make for a little more dramatic an offseason situation in Vancouver than we thought we might see.
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm so excited for this offseason, Brian. I feel like we've been talking about these pending unrestricted free agents for so long now, both like the goalies and all these defensemen. But yeah, we'll have to, I'm also excited for the rest of these playoffs. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like just hoping it's over so we can get to free agency, but yeah, lots to look forward to. And we're going to have a lot to talk about on keeping Karlsson once these signings actually happen. I guess I'll finish off on a guy that we already talked about a bit in this draft, but I just need to ask you the classic keeping Karlsson question. Right? Who is Joel Kiviranta? Like what? How did this happen? This guy who didn't even play the whole series against Colorado gets in the Dallas lineup for Game 7 after Andrew Cogliano was announced as unfit to play. It was his first game of the series. Like I said, the dude scored a hat trick, including the overtime winner. He had 5 shots on goal in that game. He was playing on a line with Guryanov and Hintz, which is a very fun trio of youngsters. And by the way, Guryanov and Hintz both had great series themselves, 8 and 6 points respectively. So if Kiviranta's playing with those guys, it's a good place to be. Like, who's this guy? Like, again, quoting Ryan from our hashtag Hockey Cards Discord channel, he shared that Kiviranta doesn't even have a hockey card right now. Like, if you wanted to like buy Kiviranta hockey cards because you think that he's going to be a future star, you can't. You got to wait for Upper Deck to make one.
This is now a hockey card podcast. Also, you've mentioned, you keep saying you're a great guy, Elon. You're just dating yourself when you say our hashtag Hockey Cards channel. Every channel in Discord starts with the little hashtag. So you just say what's after the hashtag.
I apologize.
Yeah. But it's a great channel. Hashtag hockey. We should rename it hashtag Hockey Cards. And then you'll call it hashtag Hockey Cards. Okay, who is Joel Kiviranta? Yeah, hockey card collectors don't know because that card does not exist. People who attend the NHL draft don't know because he wasn't drafted. People outside of Finland didn't know until this year because this was Kiviranta's first North American pro season. He's 24 years old, out of Finland, has spent his career to date with not even, I don't think, one of the top clubs in Finland, and not even being like one of their best players. I guess he was third in team scoring with 21 points in 58 games a few years back. And then he led the team in scoring a couple years back. And then last year, he was actually like nowhere. He wasn't even in the top 5 in team scoring. He's behind a defenseman, for Pete's sake. So this is a guy whose career has never seemed to be built around being a scorer at any level or any stage of his career. But he showed up when it mattered, right? Even in Finland. He had 2 career playoff games under his belt. So like for him to come out and do what he did was just all that more magical. The first ever hat trick from a rookie in an NHL Game 7. But the funny part is you could just see him getting benched again, like for Game 2. They probably can't bench him for Game 1, but they might bench him for Game 2 of the series, depending on Cogliano's health. I still don't think he's their first choice to play. Even in Texas this year, 23 points in 48 games. Like, this is just not someone you look to or who has ever been looked to be a scorer. He's also undersized. I think he's just a useful utility bottom 6 kind of player, or middle 6, depending on the depth of your team. But I think it would be very strange for him to crack a top 6. So I'm very excited to see if he continues making a name for himself. I'm also very excited to correctly pronounce his name is Yoel Kiviranta, just like Yoel Armia.
Okay, I'm just used to it. You know, we both have brothers named Joel, so
We
I'm
do.
just so used to saying that name. Yeah, I mean, there's like Jason Dickinson who could maybe be bumped from the lineup, or like Janmark, but no, I guess that wouldn't make much sense. Yeah, it's just, so do you think I made the right call, Brian, as the last pick of our draft there to take Pajot over Kiviranta?
Absolutely. I think that was the right call. Kiviranta is like the exciting pick, but I think it's incredibly likely that he doesn't get another point these playoffs.
Yeah, I guess so. I would like, obviously, if he ends up playing with Hintz and Guryanov, that would be pretty cool. So a guy to watch in the next round for sure, at least for Game 1. Got to imagine he gets to play at least that game. Okay, Brian, this has been fun. Nice to chat with you on a Sunday afternoon. I guess the people that download the podcast don't care when we recorded it, but just so you know, that's when we did it. And so now we have our whole day ahead of us. I'm actually going to play tennis for my first time in like 10 years. So we'll see if I get injured. Generally, I try to avoid sports and just watch and analyze them because I like to stay at 100% for podcasting, but I'm going to take a little risk here. So hopefully I'll be back at you at 100% next week as we continue to talk through these playoffs. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks again to Rickard, Andreas, and I always forget one person.
Vegard.
And Vegard for drafting with us, and congrats to them on making it this far in the KKPP. But yeah, with that, Brian, how about we cue the outro music and you could go ahead and read us the credits.
Okay, before I do, if you want to follow along with the KKPP, you can join the KKPP Discord channel on our patrons only Discord. Patronage is just $1 a month for the summer. So like, hopefully that feels essentially free to you. But it would be great to have you join us. Or Elon, perhaps you'll make a link forward to the league at keepingkarlsson.com/KKPP if you want to take a look at how the teams ended up and what happens from here over the next 2 months. This is crazy. That's so long to still be playing. Like, hockey's going to be going till like the end of October.
No, that's not true.
October.
Each round has been a couple weeks, so we've probably got about a month left.
Yeah. Well, it feels like it'll be as long as it's taking me to finally get to reading the credits. So this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons. Logo art by Brandon Weeb, outro music by Pat Roach. It was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, Charting Hockey, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Great job as always. Brian, looking forward to chatting with you again next week.
Me too. And remember, fantasy hockey is for everyone. I need a better word than remember before that.
Wait, should I edit, or do you want me to keep that?
You can keep that.
Try one more time. Just talking like normal.
I forget what you said last.
Talk to you next week.
Talk to you then. Talk to you then.
I like remember. What's wrong with that?
Okay. All right. Talk to you then. Remember, fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Yeah. Except David. He was busy today. So he wasn't able to play.
Oh, well, it's still for him. This particular draft was not for him.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
We didn't say the KKPP final draft is for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not.
All right.
It's for a select few.
So this was long. Hopefully it won't be a really hard edit, but we'll find out. Thanks anyone who watched this on YouTube. First time ever streaming on YouTube from Zoom. So I wonder how this worked out. Okay. Later, Brian.
Bye. Good luck on the hard court.
Thanks.
On the clay.
All right, stopping that. Stop the cloud recording.
All right, I am so hungry.
Okay, yeah. Send me the file when you get a chance.
It's uploading.
Okay, great. Bye.